What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Wednesday show, gang. Happy hump day, middle of the week. Hopefully things are going well for everybody out there. Anybody hit anything big last night? Feel like we were all over that slate. Profitable lineup for me. I had a Cody Bradford and forget what else. Saw a little stacks. Nothing crazy, but a good little lineup. Finished in the middle somewhere. Profitable evening for the one, but hopefully we had some winners out there. Got Cujo here. Lone Wolf is here. Good to see you guys. Matthew Patterson. Matthew Patterson says, going heavy on Pepio today. I love that spot. We'll definitely be talking about that. 50 days without alcohol from Matthew Patterson. Time to celebrate with some homemade carrot cake. Congratulations, buddy. That's great. Andy's here. Good afternoon. Sir Spencer de King. Monty Pritchett. Buen dia. Más suerte para it hoy. I think you meant tea. Colin Sutherland, good to see you. Too cold here south of Buffalo. Yeah, we're in the, wasn't a cool day here, but it's cooling off, toward the end of August and everything. We're getting there. Dimitri, happy Cueto Day, yeah. Johnny Cueto, still alive and kicking, who knew? Definitely not the pitching board that we had yesterday for today's 8-gamer. A little bit more thin, but we've got a nice top end. It's more of a high peak, rapid fall off, where yesterday we had that just gigantic plateau of mid to cheap pitchers that went literally from the top to the bottom of our pitching list. A lot shorter today with guys like Cueto going, guys like Cantillo, who's going to be facing the Yankees, Joey Cantillo, Yadiel Rodriguez, Nick Martinez. Not exactly world beaters through the middle of the board, but we do have some good options up at the top, like Jack Flaherty. We've got Aaron Nola, the aforementioned Ryan Pepio. So some good spots as well. Should be a fun one. Let some people trickle in here. And we're up to like 15. Let's dive on in. 8 games to talk about. Plenty of time. Guardians at the Yankees. First one up. Yanks drawing nearly a 5-run total. Could easily creep up to a 9-run in that game before it's all said and done and get the Yanks over 5. Looks like a good spot for obvious Yankees bats going up against Joey Cantillo in his 4th Major League start. First 3 weren't bad, but they weren't notably good either. So I feel like that's a spot we could maybe pick off in Yankee Stadium. And then just a 3.63 implied total for the Guardians feels kind of low against Nestor Cortes. Totally gettable pitcher. Better in real life than he is for DFS generally. Last time out he faced the White Sox, he went 7. He had 9 strikeouts in a 3-hit shutout performance. So, I mean, you can get that kind of upside from Nestor from time to time, but I would be absolutely stunned if he has that game against the Guardians today, especially in Yankee Stadium. It's just a different story. So I feel like Cleveland might slip through as a little bit under-owned compared to their talent levels at least. Low total for them, though. Reds at the Blue Jays. Reds going up against Yadiel Rodriguez, drawing a 4.31 implied total. And then the Blue Jays on their side facing Nick Martinez. They're at a 4.28. Both of those offenses seem in play. I feel like we can talk about those pitchers, though. There is talent there. Typically short starts from Yadiel Rodriguez. We've only completed the 6th twice this year. And he's on a stretch of not coming close. Nick Martinez, you get a little bit more depth, but a little bit shakier maybe on some of the totals. So we'll look through those guys, but I tend to lean offense there with both teams landing in the mid-4s. Phillies at the Braves, actually a good pitching matchup. It's Aaron Nola against Max Fried. So both of those teams kind of check down for quality from where you normally find them, particularly the Phillies with all their offense, their home run hitting prowess. Max Fried, very, very good at checking power, inducing weak and medium contact, limiting home runs. So taking a lot away from the Philly side. And then Aaron Nola is just Aaron Nola. He takes a lot away from the Braves, who are struggling anyway. 3.75 implied total for them. Phillies favored slightly on the road at 3.83. But neither offense looks good. Either pitcher, I think, is on the board there. Nola definitely picks up some strikeout upside for facing the Braves, too. A lot of strikeouts in that lineup. Brewers, Cardinals, 3.74 implied total from Milwaukee. They're facing Kyle Gibson, and then the Cards are drawing just a 3.83 against Tobias Myers. Seems like another spot based on the Vegas totals where we can maybe consider some pitching. I don't love either of those options, most particularly Kyle Gibson, honestly. It really have run my course with Kyle Gibson. Never really liked him, and had kind of stopped taking shots on him quite a while ago. Going up against the Brewers doesn't really feel right. This game felt like a low total yesterday, and it feels like a low total again today for these two teams. I feel like that should be, each kind of more like this with those two pitchers on the mound. I feel like they should be in the low mid fours. Put them both at 4.15, somewhere around there. If you give it what? 8, that's closer. 8.5 again, that's probably too high. The right number would probably be like 8.25, but obviously we're not doing that. But there we are at upper threes. So maybe we'll consider the pitching. Maybe we'll look at some of the bats. I do like the lineups, particularly on the Brewers side. Tigers, Cubs. I think the Tigers are sneaky interesting as well. They're very, very cheap. They're one of the more compelling spots to get to an extreme value team, to be able to roster a team like, say, the Yankees, the Phillies if you wanted them, or the Dodgers at the end of the night, despite facing a really good pitcher. The Tigers are a path to putting one of those teams together with a very top-end pitcher. So they're not uninteresting. There's a lot of talented young lefty bats in that lineup, pending what they actually roll out there. They're facing Jamison Taillon, who's not bad, but he's very gettable. He's not extremely high strikeout. It's not a high faith play, and they're coming in at just a 3.42 implied total. But I do think there's talent in that lineup. It's got to come together at the major league level. But a lot of those young kids that they've been waiting on are finally here. So it's worth taking a look at, and they make some things work price-wise. Cubbies on the other side of that one, drawing a 4.16. They're going to be facing an opener. I think it's Bo Brisky today. And then I believe it's Kenta Maeda coming out in bulk relief. That's who I have in there right now. Either way, we're not considering Tigers pitching. Cubs disappointed me yesterday. They only came through with like 3 runs and didn't end up hitting that big home run that we were looking for. I think there's reason to believe that they could come back and succeed today. Matt has been basically struggling through most of this season. He's been better in this relief role, but still, I think he's an overly targetable pitcher, and there are bats we like in that Cubs lineup. It is another day with the wind blowing in at under 10 miles an hour, the way Roth reported it. He basically said, I would never really report on under 10 mile an hour wind, but this is Wrigley Field, so I'll consider it the same way. I believe that's why that total's so low. Angels at the Royals. Royals drawing the highest implied total on the board at 5.18. The only team over 5, although, again, the Yankees could easily be placed over 5. Honestly, they should. It should be probably something like that for the Yanks. But that's where it was when I checked it out before. Michael Lorenzen going for Kansas City, and then somebody mentioned it already in chat. Johnny Cueto on the mound for the Angels. Hasn't pitched since September of last year in the show. Forgot to pull the any minor league numbers. We'll pull them up when we get there. But yeah, I think we're just looking at Royals bats in that spot. They're definitely pricey. They're a little bit difficult to reach and put together. They're not the most flexible team in terms of stacking them ideally with some of the other teams on the board because of the positional demands. But it is a really good spot for Kansas City. Angels on the other side of that one. I mean, I can believe in the Angels succeeding against Michael Lorenzen here. They got to Cole Ragans a little bit for some runs yesterday. Tampa Bay at Oakland. This is the Pepio spot. He looks dynamite for Tampa Bay facing that Oakland lineup. 3.62 implied total for the A's. And then Mitch Spence on the mound to 3.96 implied total for Tampa Bay. I wouldn't completely cross him off. He's, really short start, give up 5 runs, 2 2/3 against the Mets, the last one, but pitched into the 6th, 3 starts back against the Angels, which is a somewhat comparable opponent. 5 2/3 in each of 2 starts against the Dodgers and the Blue Jays in the 2 in between the 6-inning start and this 2 2/3 one. Fuck is whistling? I really hope that's somebody outside my windows and not some psychopath in my apartment. There's somebody just whistling a tune, and I can hear it really distinctly as if they're in the other room, and there's nobody here. That's kind of creepy. Anyway, so I wouldn't completely rule out Mitch Spence shares against that high strikeout Rays lineup, but I tend to think that the Rays will be able to get to him with some of the talent that they have in that lineup. End of the night, we have Jack Flaherty on the mound facing the Mariners. Top pitcher on your board, 3.48 implied total for that high strikeout, low-end Mariners lineup. Jack Flash looks like a pretty tremendous option today. He has given up 7 runs in his last 2 starts. Basically, he's been giving up some earned runs since I acquired him in the Dynasty League, but we're obviously looking at that spot pretty strongly. He's very expensive, but he's worth getting up to, and I think it's pretty doable today, considering a lot of the secondary options on the board are pretty affordable. On the other side, Logan Gilbert Gilbert, just it's that same spot that we talked about for good Seattle pitchers the last couple of days, facing the Dodgers. Never ideal. 4.61 implied total shows how good Logan Gilbert is. He's very talented. He's very good at pitching deep into games. Could find some upside there for the money, but not great facing Los Angeles. The whistling stopped. I hope that's a good thing. I'm pretty sure it was from outside. They do have, I think they're reshingling our roof. Parrot. Yeah, if I had a parrot, that would probably explain it. I don't think Joker's picked up that skill since the other day. Monte Bridget calling out the Vientos price. Under 5K again. Ridiculous. Kiefer Easterlin's here. Happy hump day to you too. Anthony Taylor. What's up, buddy? Dimitri, Monty, Fistula Poop is here. What's up, people's? Got to rewind, seems. I'm on Captain tonight. See, I'm on CPT? I don't know what CPT is. Other than, like, Captain. Are you Captain? Captain of what? It'd be great to find out that you're, like, the captain of one of our aircraft carriers or something. And your screen name is Fistula Poop. That would make sense. Jack Flash, top of the board, 10-9, 10-5. There's a nice discount, though, going from him to Ryan Pepio against that athletic squad. 8,200 on FanDuel, 8,300 on DraftKings. Just insanely good pricing. He's going to be super, super popular at those numbers. It's easy to reach Jack Flaherty, though, and that's a really good spot. The 10-9 is no problem to get to on FanDuel. I built a lineup before. It was using some of the Tigers that I was talking about, but I put them together with some high-end Yankees, and I had like 12,000 and change to spend on pitching. So it was like, all right, put in Jack Flaherty, and then I can upgrade 2 spots. So it's really easy to reach Jack Flaherty, and he's worth it. But there are some decent alternatives. Again, this board spikes really high. These are 3 extremely good options, and then 2 talented pitchers just in more challenging matchups. Nestor against the Guardians, which you don't like, and then it gets really low end really fast. I basically don't like anybody down through here. We'll talk about them all, obviously. But, again, it peaks really high, and it's not the same middle as it was yesterday. Nola, 99.92. Happy to have him at those prices against Atlanta. There's plenty of strikeouts for him to go get in that lineup. We know he hasn't been as super sharp as he used to be, but still a very talented pitcher. Worth getting to there. Logan Gilbert, again, 10-6 is challenging on FanDuel. 95 on DraftKings is a little bit more reasonable. You should probably be more like 95 here, like, 9,089, somewhere around there, just given the matchup against the Dodgers. But again, more than capable of giving you 7 clean innings and finding 5-6 strikeouts against that Dodger squad. He is that good. Max Fried, very talented keeping the ball in the yard, keeping it on the ground, definitely limiting for the Phillies' home run numbers, which we'll take a look at. Has absolutely comparable ability to everybody above him on the board. Just a tough matchup. 9,200, 8,500, fair pricing for it. I think you can go to Max Fried here. He's not the top priority. He's not in an easy spot. He's not in a safe spot. But he's definitely got similar ceiling to everybody else, even against Philly. I just don't trust Nestor for DFS purposes. I'll say it again, he's a better real-life pitcher than he is a DFS pitcher. And even in real life, he gets by on a lot of just funkiness on the mound. He doesn't have, like, elite stuff. He just makes things work, and he keeps hitters really off their toes, and he's challenging to hit against. And he's got a lot of pitches. But he's not great. 8,800, 8,900 is a fair price, but Cleveland is super low strikeout. Yankee Stadium works against him. It's just not a good spot. It wouldn't completely stun me if he was in a winning lineup at those prices, because that does buy you bats compared to everybody other than Ryan Pepio above him there. But I greatly prefer Pepio between the two, and he's cheaper, easier to get to, despite the popularity. And if I'm going to a super discounted team, and then just paying up for a bunch of bats, like the ultra elite bats from the Yankees, or the Phillies, or the Dodgers, or whoever you're going to, then I think I'm just looking in that direction, and I'll eat the chalk, because that'll still be a lower-owned approach. So, pretty okay with it. Just taking the Pepio over Cortez shares. Jamison Tyon, again, I kind of like looking at that Detroit team, but it wouldn't stun me at all if he had a good game against them. He is good enough to beat that team, find a bunch of strikeouts against them, and they are low end enough to fail against him. It's just a lot of really interesting, really, really cheap talented young left-handed bats in that lineup now that you can throw against Tyon. And again, it's more of a DFS thing than it is a I really like the Tigers and think they're going to succeed here thing, but it works. 8,000, 8,400 though, you can absolutely throw some shares at them, and one way or the other, depending on how you're looking at it, if you're building a bunch of lineups and you take either a big Tigers position or a big Jameson Tyon position, you should probably have some of the other one. Tobias Myers, 78, 8,000. Just fairly priced in the middle of the board against a gettable enough St. Louis team. We'll give him a look. Nick Martinez, similar against Toronto on DraftKings. 6,300 is probably very, very playable from the bargain bin for him. 9,000 on FanDuel feels like somebody slipped on the keyboard and was trying to type 8,000 and just hit the wrong button. I'm really not sure about that one. Don't think we go there against Toronto. Kyle Gibson against Milwaukee, 81-78. Like I said, pretty done taking shots on Kyle Gibson and have been for a long time now. But given those low totals in that game, both for him and for Tobias Myers, we're going to have to consider him at those mid-board prices. Probably particularly over here in a bunch of lineups, you're going to probably want to have to mix in some Kyle Gibson. Did I say want to have to? You don't want to have to, but you probably have to. You don't want to, but you probably have. Mitch Spence against Tampa Bay. Strikeout-based upside, maybe. Not good. Not really talented at finding strikeouts. But 6,400, 6,500, maybe you could throw that dart a few times, most particularly, again, on DraftKings. Jadiel, I just don't really trust the depth, and you might get that lower strikeout version of the Cincinnati lineup. So I don't love it, but again, it's another guy who's cheap enough and can succeed over 5 and change. So it kind of puts him on the board on DK a little bit more. Lorenzen against the Angels, pretty skippable. But at least in the mix, if these guys are in the mix, he's got to be in the mix, given the opponent there. Cantillo's a pretty hard no, Cueto's a hard no, and Kenta Maeda, or whatever comes out for the Tigers, is definitely a no. Let me load Labs up here so we can grab lineups as they come out, or as Labs bothers to put them up. Still no Guardians lineup on Labs. Let's see if we got it on Underdog. We do. 4 minutes ago. It's pretty similar, I think, to what they're normally doing. Hit the like, hit the subscribe as we get started here. Make sure you're getting those notifications for when shows pop up. It's going to be especially important as we have football starting up in a couple of weeks. And we're going to be doing football shows, who knows when, during the day sometime or into the evening. But it's going to be dual shows for a while. So you're definitely going to want to get those notices of when things go live. Likes help us out. Fry, Naylor, Noel, Menez, Freeman, and Hedges. One change in the lineup. So yeah, likes help us out, and our guys over at acemind.io deserve your eyeballs at their site. You got to check them out. 3-day free trial out of the gate for them, for their optimizer, their sim tools, all the major DFS sports, some of the minor DFS sports over there. Great product, great tool, and if you use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, when you decide to sign up, it gets you 20% off your first month over there, and a little bit kicks back over here and helps out. So good things all around. So give them a look. Guardians, Yankees. Again, the Yanks looking pretty solid here. I actually had to massage the home run numbers to make them a little bit normalized. The model wanted to run off and go crazy with them. You can see a 6.90% home run rate given up by Joey Cantillo, the lefty, so far in his 3 starts, his 13 innings. He has a 15.5% strikeout rate and a 10.3% walk rate. He's pitched to a 6.23 ERA and a 5.14 xFIP. Obviously, we're talking about just 3 starts, but he has given up a bunch of power so far. That amounts to 5 2/3 against Minnesota. He gave up 2 home runs in that game, struck out 2, walked 3. Just 3 earned runs allowed, though, on 5 hits. 4 innings against Baltimore, gave up 3 earned runs, 3 hits, but no home runs. Struck out 4, walked 0. First game was at Philly, 3 1/3, 3 earned runs on 4 hits, 2 home runs allowed in that game, 3 strikeouts, 3 walks. So 2 similarly bumpy starts. He's faced 3 really tough opponents, though. Philly, Baltimore, and the Twins, and now he gets the Yankees, this poor kid. I don't think you're going there for DFS for any reason, even at 53, 61. There's just really, really limited upside. Even the good day doesn't look like it's going to be a long day. for innings, challenges the quality start, the win bonus, etc., etc. And it looks like the Yankees are going to be prepared to pound this kid. A lot of good righty bats in that Yankee lineup, plus Juan Soto, plus Austin Wells, who's handled lefty pitching pretty well so far. You get the weaker bottom end of the lineup for sure, but there's a lot of options down there. You get a super cheap Oswald Peraza down the lineup, who's handled himself well over his 7 plate appearances so far this season. Remains very, very cheap on FanDuel across 3 positions. Still has 2 positions on DraftKings for $3,000. So I just think it's much more of a Yankees day here. They look like one of the top teams on the board. They have the second highest run total at nearly 5. Probably will be above 5 before the gun fires. On the other side, the Guardians, again, it's a 20% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the Guardians lineup. They've got a bunch of really good hitters in this lineup at the top, and they've got power basically, throughout, or at least good bat-on-ball hitters throughout this lineup. So I really never love targeting them, even when it's like an ace caliber guy on the mound. And Nestor's, again, decent. He's a good real-life pitcher, but he's no ace. 22.8% strikeout rate, 4.20 ERA against a 4.10 xFIP. 10.5% swinging is fine, but just a 25.3% CSW? Not throwing nearly enough strikes, and look at all the premium contact he's given up. 8.6% barrels, 43.4% hard hits is way over the line. 90 miles an hour dead on the line for exit velo on a 22.5 degree average launch angle. That means the ball is flying up into the air at great velocity frequently with this pitcher. And he's going to be doing it in Yankee Stadium against a bunch of guys. Jose Ramirez is in this lineup. Josh Naylor is in this lineup. Big Christmas is in this lineup. Monster home run numbers for all 3 of those guys. I'm seeing power and offense on both sides of this game. I really don't like the look for Nestor. 88-89, I think it is priced in a little bit with the risk and the difference, just the offset for his ceiling versus some of these guys' ceiling when it comes to strikeouts. And part of that is on Nestor at his 22 and change strikeout rate, but a lot of that is also on the Guardians at their low strikeout rate. So it's not a great spot, but it's a little bit discounted from the absolute ceiling. So he's on the board, but he's more of a mixer today. He's more of a just, I had 10% Nestor across my 150 or whatever. I don't think he's going to be a priority play. I really don't see him winning the Slate all that often. If he was cheaper, he'd give you a bit more of a lane. Like if they had him at like 82, 84. Give me $500 more. It just gives you a little bit more to work with. I don't think that price is quite low enough. But again, Nestor is capable of breaking off very good starts. 5 1/3 against the Phillies at Philadelphia. 3 starts back. He gave up 3 earned runs. He struck out 6. He gave up a home run, walked 2. A couple of really short, bumpy starts against Boston, Tampa Bay twice. That was the really rough stretch. He gave up 4 earned runs against Boston at Fenway over 4 2/3, 5 strikeouts. 6 earned runs to Tampa Bay in Yankee Stadium, and then 5 earned runs at Tampa Bay, which is the worst of those 2 starts despite striking out 4 in that one. He gave up 3 home runs in the start that happened at Yankee Stadium. 6 earned runs on 8 hits. I could absolutely see the Guardians doing something similar to him today. If you're looking at Guardians bats, Stephen Kwan off the top, always a good way to get things started. Even with a lefty on the mound, doesn't really matter here, I don't think. Double check that, though. We've got time to double check things today. We don't have 13 games to fly through. Not that that really stopped me from double checking things and rambling through yesterday. Kwan's elite against fellow lefties. He's actually significantly better this year against fellow lefties. 357, 413, 504 versus against righties, 295, 359, 445. It's a big difference. 127 plate appearances against lefties, 310 against righties. So yeah, all the more reason to play Stephen Kwan if you're going to the Guardians. 46-31, he's not expensive at all for compared to how frequently he gets on base. Ahead of guys like Lane Thomas, Jose Ramirez, David Fry, Josh Naylor, all the power in this lineup. It's definitely an interesting bat off the top. Never strikes out. Draws a medium walk rate, but he's getting on at a 375 clip. His creator runs 40% better than average. He's an elite correlated scoring option for DFS. Lane Thomas for 44, 3,000. Cheap enough. Not a great season out of him. 8 home runs and 29 steals with a 138 ISO and 95 WRC plus over 403 chances, most of which came with the Nationals. Last year, though, guy hit 28 home runs, stole 20 bases, /268, 315, 468, a 201 ISO, 109 WRC plus. his hands didn't fall off. That hitter's still there somewhere. Hard hits are actually up a little bit. Strikeouts are down a little bit. Walks are up. Barrels are just down a little bit. So, a little bit of happenstance mixed in there. I'm not really worried. I like the upside, and as I've been saying, kind of designed in a lab to hit in the middle of this lineup. So I like Lane Thomas here, and he's cheap for his talent. 63.43. Jose Ramirez is very expensive, but he's absolutely worth it. 32 homers, 29 steals, 101 ribbies if you care about ribbies, and 259 ISO, a 137 WRC plus. He never strikes out either. 12.9% Ks this year, 7.8% walks. Crushes the ball when he makes contact. Nothing to dislike about Jose Ramirez in this spot. David Fry from the right side. Catcher eligible on DraftKings for 38. Catcher first base and outfield on FanDuel for just 2,800. He's hit 12 home runs this year. 332 plate appearances, a 184 ISO. Good run creator at 131 WRC plus. The power that we saw, that big power surge when he first landed in the lineup was probably a bit of an illusion. He's settled into more of, a home run every now and again kind of a guy. 6.9% barrels, 39.2% hard hits. But he still does have a pretty decent ceiling for the money hitting cleanup in this lineup against a lefty pitcher. Naylor, significant power upside, take shots at the right field porch even against the lefty. I don't really care about that, and he'll probably get some plate appearances against the bullpen. Definitely some upside for Josh Naylor, and he'll probably go a little bit lower owned compared to his talent level. Janeski Noel, again, big number in the home run model. He's hit 9 already in just 109 plate appearances. 316 ISO, 15.4% barrels. Guys getting the fat part of the bat on the ball and putting it in the air. That's really all that matters here. 35-27. There's a lot of power. There's a lot to like there. Andres Jimenez, 35-28. Low strikeout, low walk, a lot of balls in play, but not really seeing a ton of success for it. 19 points below average for run creation, 252, 304, 331. Kind of a rough season for Jimenez, but he does have talent. He's cheap at second base. Mix and match caliber player. Tyler Freeman, mid-priced, not really that successful this year. I was expecting a lot more in terms of the hit tool. We're just at 213, 307, 330 after 365 plate appearances. 7 home runs, 10 steals. He's like a medium, light power guy, but he's supposed to be a much better hitter than this. So disappointing year out of him, but a mix and match player with multi-position late in the lineup. Austin Hedges, pretty skippable as a catcher, despite being basically the mid-price. Haven't gotten much out of him. On the Yankees side, it's the typical version of the lineup with Gleyber off the top, 38-27. 311 on base. I'll continue to harp on the on base. It's really all you have to do ahead of that trio of power hitters. All you have to do is get to first base somehow. He can draw a walk, 9.8% this year, 10% last year. He's got the strikeouts down to 21%. That was higher. It was significantly lower last year at 14.6. But earlier this year, it was higher than this 21. It's come down a little bit. Some of the things around the edges he's managed to massage into looking like, decent numbers. But overall, 235, 311, 346, and 88 WRC+. Really disappointing season for Gleyber, probably playing his way out of pinstripes. Juan Soto, 65-45, elite. Aaron Judge, 69-48, elite. 14.44 for Soto, 17.21 for Judge in the home run model. Soto's got 35. Judge has 45 home runs, 304 ISO, 377 ISO, 88% better than average, and 119% better than average for run creation. After them, there's just a guy called Giancarlo Stanton who only costs $4,800 on DraftKings and $3,000 on FanDuel, both of which are misprices. He's got so much power. He's just absolutely murders the ball. 17.9% barrels this year, 52.4% hard hits. Neither of those numbers is very far off of, let's say, Juan Soto. I don't need to sell the idea that Giancarlo Stanton hits for power, I don't think. Yes, he's not good at hitting for average. 240, 299, 473. That's fine. From a guy who hits the ball as hard as he does, I'll take it. The 30% strikeouts is right where he was last year. Totally fine with it. No issues with it. He's got elite upside. 12 plus in the home run model. He's very cheap hitting behind these guys. And that's a great lineup spot because as much as these guys clear the bases, when they're not doing that, when they're not hitting the ball over the wall, they're getting on. That's between the two, it's a 447 on base, 431 for Soto, 463 for Aaron Judge. That's insane to have those two guys with everything else they do also get on base like that. So there's just opportunity after opportunity for Giancarlo Stanton. Yeah, he doesn't come through a lot of the time. He's disappointing to watch sometimes. Believe me, I know. But he can be insanely good and have massive, massive upside. You don't skip him. It's difficult because it puts 3 outfielders into the lineup on either side. I wish there was some multi-position there somehow, but he's worthwhile. They should create like a DH role somehow. Austin Wells, 4,200, 2,900. Pretty interesting option at the catcher spot for a fair price. He's got 9 home runs and 300 plate appearances, a 168 ISO. He's created a run 17% better than average. He's been a pretty good shot in the arm at the catcher position offensively for the Yankees. And he's gotten good behind the plate too. So looks like he's going to stick. 20% strikeouts, 12% walks. Having a really good season. 5.01 in the home run model with a little bit more upside than that probably. Just impacted a little bit by the lefty. But a left-handed bat that can obviously take advantage of the short porch. Volpe, up and down season as usual. 11 home runs, 22 stolen bases, just a 300 on base, a 93 WRC plus. I think he's just lost in terms of what is he at the plate. What kind of a hitter does he want to be? Does he want to try and sell out for power? Does he want to focus on getting on base and stealing bases? And these just falls in the cracks in between and doesn't do any of it well. 249, 300, 386. He's supposed to be better than this. Verdugo, totally skippable, but mix and match caliber outfielder. Oswald Peraza is interesting at the bottom of the lineup. Over his 7 plate appearances, he's got a home run on the board already. He's hit the ball pretty hard so far, 25% barrels. 25% hard hits as well, but a 25% barrel rate in the very limited number of batted ball events. But the kid's got a lot of talent. Again, he is a top prospect organizationally. Just 2,200 with 3 infield positions on FanDuel, 3,000 third base and shortstop on DraftKings. Can absolutely get to some Peraza, and he makes a lot of things work in this Yankees lineup. Ben Rice at 43-27 has 7 home runs on the board at 203 ISO, but disappointing at the 188, 287. I was expecting a little bit more than that because the kid can draw a walk. He's striking out at a 25.5% clip. It's not egregiously bad, but that is a high strikeout rate. But should be better than this in terms of his average. I think given more plate appearances, it would come up, and he's been absolutely tattooing the ball when he makes contact with it. So worth getting to at the cheap prices at first base, and there's no alternative in this lineup at the position. So you either take it here or get it from your other stack. Yankees bats, Guardians bats, Nestor Cortez, don't play Joey Cantillo. Uh-oh. Is there drama? Oh, the first thing I saw when I jumped into the chat window was just all in caps. You can't take jokes. It's never a good sign. Mama and Larry C going back and forth. It's apparently some Discord mockery. That bar. Everybody get along with everybody. Everybody love everybody. Jackie Moon. 2 dozen text messages since this show started. So let's get into this next one. Yadier Rodriguez on the mound for the Blue Jays. Nick Martinez on the other side for the Cincinnati Reds. Like I said, I kind of tend to lean offense with both these teams a little bit over 4 runs on a day where a bunch of teams are again in the high 3s, despite kind of a weaker pitching slate. These aren't terrible totals. Yadier can be good, but he's only given us again 6 innings twice this year. A 6-inning start all the way back in July 6th against Seattle. He struck out 6. That was one of probably his best DFS outing of the year. Game before that, he went 6 2/3 against Houston. 1 run on 2 hits in that one. Also struck out 6, but gave up a homer, walked 2. Since then, 4 innings, 5 2/3, 2/3 of an inning, 4 2/3, 5 2/3, and 5 innings with 4 runs allowed in his most recent start. He also gave up 3 home runs at Wrigley Field in that game. Don't know which direction the wind was blowing, but I have my suspicions. 5 strikeouts in that one, 2 walks, 3 homers, 4 earned runs on 4 hits over 5 innings. Capable of getting to 6, but obviously not doing it all that frequently. 23.8% strikeout rate is decent. 3.86 ERA, a 4.36 xFIP. I think he is a talented guy. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal, but he's not terribly below the average. I just don't love targeting this version of this Reds lineup at 21.9% strikeouts. Pushed up a little bit by a small sample, 31.4 from Noelvi, but dragged down the other way by Santiago at 11.9%. I don't know. I don't love the upside for Jadiel. He's not expensive, though. 73.69. If you're inclined to throw that dart a few times, hope for your 6 innings, then I think you can go for it. He's much more playable on DraftKings at 73. The 69 is really mostly in question because of the quality start issue. I do think given the upside, like the extreme peak that the ceiling has, you're probably going to need the quality start bonus from any of these lower end pitchers, especially in a lower than expected strikeout spot. Don't love the 6,900, even though he's cheap on FanDuel. I think he's got to make up a lot of ground for you between that price and whatever you're buying hitters wise. But on DraftKings, that price works a lot better. 5 innings, maybe get the win bonus against Nick Martinez here. Not bad. For Martinez, 20.1% strikeout rate, but a minuscule 2.5% walk rate. Very, very good there. Very good at limiting premium contact and power as well. 4.3% barrels this year, 30.3% hard hits, and 86.5 miles an hour of exit velo, just a 2.04% home run, 3.25 ERA, and a 3.92 xFIP. You can see a little bit the difference, between the xFIP and the ERA, but a sub 4 xFIP, still not bad for a $6,300 DraftKings pitcher. I still have no idea how they arrived at $9,000 on FanDuel. That price is absurd. 11.4% swinging strikes is nice, but 26.7% CSW. He's been managing games a lot more than he's been like elite and winning DFS tournaments. 4 strikeouts last game against Kansas City, gave up 3 runs on 8 hits, but went 6 innings. That's a quality start. Took the loss. No win bonus against Milwaukee the start before that, despite one hitting them over 7 innings and striking out 7, no earned runs. They still couldn't manage to win the game for him. 5 innings before that, shutout ball, 4 hits against the Marlins. He did pick up the win there, 5 strikeouts in that one. So, clean innings are on the board. He's given up. God damn, that's a good stretch. A lot of this is relief work as you go back in time, but it's been a minute since he's given up earned runs. That's 4 and a third, 5 and a third. We're starting there. In his last 30 plus innings, he's given up 4 earned runs. Again, a lot of it outside of the last 3 outings, it was in bulk relief. 3 runs here, or 3 innings here, 4 innings there. But 3 pretty good full starts in a row, and a nice little string of at least not allowing runs. Fairly low strikeout, but again, that $6,300 price is at least appealing. That makes a lot of things work. It's not a mistake to take that against a 23.1% strikeout version of the Blue Jays lineup that does include Ernie Clement, 7.9. As we talk about all the time, their best hitters are their low strikeout guys. Vladdy at just 14.4 is obviously lethal. 19.4 for George Springer, who's up to 16 home runs now. 13 stolen bases, 222, 301, 380. All of a sudden looking a little bit better. But you do have Dalton Varsho there who's targetable, and then you've got this run of 30-plus guys in a mixed variety of plate appearance samples. So there's a little bit of strikeout upside for the back end of this lineup, but there's a lot of strikeout downside and danger at the top of the lineup. But given that low price at 63, I guess the clean innings run is how FanDuel arrived at the 9,000, but I really don't see that. Even if you get 6, which is in the cards, he's gone, again, 6 innings last time, 7 the time before that. Just seems like a bad fit. If you're spending 9, for one, you've got Pepio at 82. You could reach up for Fried against the Phillies at 92. You could take a shot with Nestor at 88. There seem like better ways to spend that. Find another 9 and take Nola against Atlanta. I don't know. If I'm going there, I'd probably just get, again, I would either eat the chalk there. I'm just considering whether, I know I just went through those guys, but whether Myers at 78 or Gibby on the other side at 81 would even be more appealing. Just for the discount. They project similarly, obviously. I would probably do that. I would take my favorite of these 2 guys, I think, over Nick Martinez here. You're paying through the nose for just clean innings that he's already pitched. But there's nothing overly predictive about that. This is more predictive. He's more in the 4 earned runs kind of place. If you're taking Reds bats, Jonathan India, not a bad way to get started at 45, 3,000. 356 on base percentage this year, 109 WRC+. Plus. Much better as a correlated scoring option, but does have a little bit of individual ability. 11 home runs, 10 stolen bases. Moderate in terms of his contact rate, good at drawing walks, low strikeout rate, so very, very playable positionally at second and not expensive for what he does on the field. Ellie for 61.37 has 21 homers and 59 steals at 226 ISO. Absolute superstar and well worth shares at the shortstop position. Tyler Stevenson, 44.8% hard hits. He's hit 16 home runs. He's got a 204 ISO. Only cost 29 on this team as your first baseman over Ty France. You don't have Jeimer Candelario in the lineup today anyway. So I would go Tyler Stevenson 100 times out of 100 over Ty France. Maybe not 100 out of 100, but a lot. 90 out of 100. I like Tyler Stevenson a lot more, and I like that lineup spot a lot more for $400 more. On DraftKings, 4,200 at the catcher spot is an absolute bargain for his talent, for his upside. There's nothing about Jadiel that would suggest that Tyler Stevenson can't have a successful day here. So, like that. TJ Friedl put the ball in play, more of a slap hitter, but 10 home runs on the season, 6 stolen bases, a 318 on base percentage, 188 ISO. He's finding power. He's succeeding for extra base hits, but you can see what the contact actually looks like. So he's one of those deceptive weak and medium contact, but finds extra base hits, so the ISO's not bad, and he finds home runs from time to time bats. That's why he lands in the cleanup role, I think, despite that weak contact. Spencer Steer at 52 is not great. First base and outfield on DraftKings. 32 is more reasonable with that second base eligibility on FanDuel. Also first base and outfield, obviously. 18 homers, 20 steals, 192 ISO, 104 WRC+. If you're going to Reds, Spencer Steer is still one of their high priority bats, even at the more uncomfortable price. And here he just fits right in with everybody else. France is, again, highly, highly skippable. I'd rather play Stevenson here. On DraftKings, I'd rather probably just put Spencer Steer at first base and find my way the rest of the way. But Ty France is moderately playable. 11 home runs on the year, dead at league average WRC+. Jake Fraley, a little bit of multi-category skills, 3 home runs, 16 stolen bases, slashing 271, 323, 366, but not at all consistent, not that much power at .095 ISO and an 89 WRC+. Marte hasn't given you much, and Santiago Espinal doesn't give you much. Counting stats every now and again. An okay average, but a weak on base, weak WRC+. So pretty limited down the bottom of the Reds lineup, but I do like the top handful of hitters, and I have no problems targeting Jadiel here. On the other side, George Springer still cheap at 44.29. A little bit of a power surge, obviously. We saw it yesterday. No issues going to Springer, and as we've talked about throughout, the numbers are not far off the mark for what he's done in the past. It's not like a lot of this was really indicative of extreme struggles. He was not coming through at all, but now that we're seeing a little bit more power, now that we're seeing a little bit more consistency, as long as he's cheap, it's easy to get him in lineups. There's a lot going on outside today. 4,200 for Dalton Varsho, wildly inconsistent player, 15 homers and 10 steals, a 197 ISO, right at league average, 100 WRC+. He's really a mix and match caliber talent, but it is a good spot in that lineup. So if you're drawing Blue Jay shares targeting Nick Martinez, you can definitely include Dalton Varsho, but not a guy who's like drawing you to go to the Blue Jays. Vladdy is that guy. 14% barrels, 55.9% hard hits, 26 home runs on the season, a 233 ISO. Again, Martinez has been very good at limiting premium contact, inducing weak and medium contact, limiting home runs, but Vladdy's a different kind of beast at the plate. So definitely think you can roll with some shares of him. I think you can go to him as a one-off for an expensive price if you've got the salary to spend. Top priority bat in this lineup if you're stacking Blue Jays. He's obviously just ridiculous. Spencer Harwitz, 39-28 multi-position, second base and first base on both sites. 258, 348, 408, creating ones 16% better than average. That's what he's good at. Don't love him in the cleanup role. I would probably just flip, honestly, him and Varsho, but I might just go the lefty in the leadoff spot, go Springer second. Don't worry about the righty-righty back-to-back. Harwitz is, again, as I've said a number of times, more of a low strikeout, high walk, get on base very frequently, and will take what we get in terms of your power output kind of a hitter. So I don't love that spot in the lineup for him, but it makes him for DFS at these cheap prices. It does make him a top priority bat in this lineup. Ernie Clement, super low strikeout and low walk, a lot of balls in play for a cheap price and multi-position eligibility on both sites. Needs to get on base a little bit more, find a few more base hits, more consistency, but elite bat on ball skills. Leo Jimenez is just cheap shortstop and second base on both sites. Hasn't found much success in the show yet, but he has hit 3 home runs, a 172 ISO, and a 103 WRC+. Mix and match caliber for very, very cheap. So is Addison Barger at 23-24. He's also got 3 home runs and 120 plate appearances, but just a 48 WRC+ and a 210 on base. Over 371 plate appearances, Davis Schneider's at Sub Mendoza, sub 300 on base, and an 85 WRC+. He's hit 10 home runs. It's really all you're getting out of him. 2,500, 2,900, 3,200, second base and outfield on both sides. And then Brian Servin is catching today, and congratulations to him. Reds bats slightly ahead of Blue Jays bats. I think I'd rather target Yadiel than Nick Martinez. And then it's probably that way pitching-wise too, but really you're only playing these pitchers on DraftKings, I think. It's probably Nick Martinez over Yadiel, especially with that $1,000 price difference for the guy who's more likely to give you depth. Similarly likely to win the game. They're basically dead even in terms of the win. So yeah, I do end up preferring bats in this one. Can you go lie down? What are you doing? This is a Joker comes by me and makes all kinds of weird noises show. Good boy. Go lie down. Phillies lineup is in. Let's see if we got it up on the labs. That would be easier. We do. So good pitching matchup in this one. Both teams diminished by the opposing pitchers. Both of these lineups are always going to be at least a little bit playable, especially the top of the Phillies. Obviously, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper can succeed against anyone. You can throw Alec Bowman into that mix too. JT Realmuto if you wanted to. But Max Fried is very talented. You got to play with the talent here. So 4.9% barrels on a 3.8 degree average launch, just 32.8% hard hits this year, 85.5 miles an hour of exit velo, and a 1.96% hard hit rate. It just takes the bats out of these guys' hands in terms of power. Schwarber, how often do we see Schwarber at just 7.8 in the home run model? Harper at 6.8. These guys have 28, 26 home runs at 227 and a 252 ISO apiece. Those are elite power bats. Extreme premium contact from both of those guys. Trey Turner's no slouch for any of that either. 14 home runs, 14 steals out of him, a 132 WRC+. These guys are great run creators. Maybe that's how they find success against Max Fried. But then that becomes a matter of, all right, how many times are we sequencing? Where am I getting my big double, my 3-run double out of now if we're not hitting home runs? It becomes a lot more challenging for them as a stack if you don't get those big scoring events. And really that's what Max Fried is very, very good at. Despite the Phillies' talent for sequencing, and they are quite good at sequencing, that top 4 has an average on base of 361. And again, an average WRC plus of 135. So you can only take them down so far. If you pull up the top stacks board, you can see they're 6th or 7th, I think. They can only fall so far. But doesn't feel like a great day to get to Phillies outside of the fact that they'll probably be pretty low owned with that low run total in the matchup against Max Fried. Fried a 3.62 ERA, a 3.48 xFIP, 22.6% strikeouts. Looks a lot like Max Fried in terms of the numbers. Has hit a couple bumpy spots along the way, including a few in his most recent starts, but typically very solid upside for 6 innings. Hasn't gotten there in his last 3, 5 1/3 in the last one, 3 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 3 walks. Start before that, just 5 runs. That was at Colorado, 5 innings rather. Gave up 4 earned and 5 runs on 7 hits. Struck out 9, but a rough start at Colorado. And then had a bad one against Miami that we actually were using him for. Just 3 1/3, he gave up 5 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, and a really wonky 5 walks out of him. That was a bad start. Before that, he had gone 4 straight 6-inning starts. 3 out of the 4 were quality starts with just 1 run allowed. 4 strikeouts and a bunch of them 7 strikeouts. He's not a big-time strikeout pitcher, but he can find a few against the Phils. 21.2% strikeouts, put him right around his average. On the other side, Aaron Nola, again, a little bit of a decline this year, but still 3.45 ERA, a 3.62 xFIP, 22.7% strikeouts. That's where we've lost most of our qualities in the strikeouts, but this is still fine. Still gives you a good shot at depth, still gives you a decent shot at a win. Not terrible for premium contact, but has allowed a few home runs along the way. That's more happenstance than anything else. None of this is bad in terms of the contact that's been generated against him. Stuff Plus still likes the Arsenal above average. Still totally fine going to Aaron Nola, and it's a high strikeout Braves lineup, 23.4%. That's bolstered by Gio Urshela at 15.2. Everybody above Gio, we've got Whit Merrifield up there in the 2 spot. We'll leave Whit in for now. 24.4 if we leave Whit in. If we take Whit out and leave Gio in, it's 24.6. And we take them both out, we just focus on the power bats and the guys who are actually good at hitting baseballs. That goes to 25.9%. So there are definitely strikeouts for Aaron Nola in this Braves lineup. There's a little bit of danger, but not as much as usual. Matt Olson's still here, still hitting the ball really, really hard, but having a bad season. Marcell Ozuna's having a great season. But other than him, Michael Harris is very talented, but having kind of a bumpy year. Whit Merrifield hasn't been good at all this season. Sean Murphy hasn't really found his true form this year, but is very good and a very good power bat. But the bottom 4, totally gettable. Not a bad Nola spot. My hope is that people, exaggerate the decline as they tend to do with Aaron Nola. Go away from him for the matchup against the Braves when there's no good reason to. And he ends up a little bit lower owned than he ought to be. That would be the ideal with Aaron Nola today. 92, perfectly happy with it on DraftKings. 99, I'll definitely take it on FanDuel. And again, he's another pitcher who's nicely offset. If you can't get to Jack Flash up there, save $1,000, go to Aaron Nola right here, and you avoid probably a lot more popularity on Ryan Pepio, obviously for a cheaper price. If you are taking the Phillies bats, I kind of talked it through already in terms of the top end. Diminished power, a couple of elite bats in these top 3. I just talked about all 3 of those guys. Alec Bohm at 49.35 definitely joins those guys. Third base only on DraftKings, first and third base on FanDuel, a little bit more value there. 13 home runs, a 180 ISO, a 129 WRC+. Strikes out just 13.7% of the time and hits the ball hard 47% of the time. He's essentially a right-handed Vinny Pasquantino. I made that example the other day, and I think it's very pretty much on the nose. He's hitting for a better average than Vinny is so far this year. Similar power output, a little bit lighter after that power surge from Vinny. But in terms of the very, very low strikeout rate and the very high hard hit rates, these guys are very similar, just lefty and righty. Nick Castellanos, 42.33 across sites, differently priced, much better bargain on the DK slate. 16 home runs this year, a 168 ISO. Not the picture of consistency, but a little bit of power. It's just difficult pitcher to generate power against. JT Realmuto, 4,300, 3,000. If you're looking for sequencing, obviously he's in play as a catcher bat for a fair price. 8 home runs out of him this year, just a 130 ISO. Hasn't given you too much power, but we know there's power there, and you can see the 8.6% barrels, 44.8% hard hits. We're not far off the mark in terms of how he's striking the ball. It's more just results-based. So I think we can get to JT Realmuto if we're going to Phillies. Weston Wilson, 41.24, differently priced across sites there again. 3 positions for 24 is a lot better than outfield only for 41 on DraftKings. 3 home runs in 47 plate appearances, a great slash line so far, 295 ISO, making killer contact so far. I can see why DraftKings got excited and priced him up. FanDuel hasn't. Take advantage over there if you're going to Phils, but again, not a good day for power for Philadelphia. Edmundo Sosa, mix and match quality, a little bit more than that in the infield, good run creator, correlated scoring. Johan Rojas, not much of a bat. If you go to the Braves, there's probably a little bit more ceiling for the Braves. Bad day out of Aaron Nola looks a little different than a bad day out of Fried most of the time. There's a little bit more upside for home runs for power. You can see Marcell Ozuna at 13.47 in the home run model, leading the team. He's got 37 long balls on the year at 288 ISO. He's been absolutely fantastic, over 531 chances. Matt Olson hasn't been. But like I keep talking about, a 191 ISO, not bad. We want 200 plus from our elite power bats, but that's still a decent ISO. 21 home runs is not where we want Matt Olson, but over 527 plate appearances in a vacuum, 21 home runs is not terrible power output. It's more than everybody except for Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber on the Phillies, for example. It's more than everybody else on this team other than Marcell Ozuna, but it's not where Matt Olson would typically be after 527 plate appearances. 11.7% barrels and 46.6% hard hits for other hitters is elite. For Matt Olson, it's a downturn. So a lot of that has gotten priced away. 5,400 is not bad on DraftKings. 3,400 is not bad on FanDuel. There is still killer upside. 8.58 in the home run model. Believably, you could have had him over 10. Nola giving up a 3.52% home run rate this year. Again, most of it's probably just happenstance given those contact numbers that he's allowed. But if anybody can find some happenstance against Aaron Nola, Matt Olson's at least on the list still. Michael Harris back in the lineup, 4,200, 3,000. It's nice to have him back, but 252, 297, 364, 83 WRC plus, 6 homers, 8 steals. He needs to give us a little bit better than that. He does still have a very good hard hit rate, 45% hard hits, and obviously missed a big chunk of the season there. A good player for multi-category contributions, and not a bad option. Probably better than what the Braves have been rolling out in the leadoff spot since Acuna went down. So pretty good to pick off if you're stacking up Braves. I like him a lot better than Whit Merrifield, even though Merrifield's just 33-23. He has multi-position on FanDuel. Not a good bat right now. 215, 309, 327, and 82 WRC plus, 4 homers, 16 stolen bases. Once upon a time, a good multi-category contributor. What's he done since arriving in Atlanta? Let's see. Is he on a big surge? I haven't really looked at him. Did have a good game yesterday. I didn't catch that. Double and a triple. Scored a run. Since joining Atlanta on the 25th of July, we're at 259, 386, 414. So he's getting on base at a decent clip. 1 homer, 13 runs scored, 5 steals but caught twice. Pair of doubles, pair of triples. He's definitely been better since joining Atlanta. All right, I guess for the pricing, we can put him on the board since he plays second base anyway. So cheap option at second base. If you're stacking Braves, you could do worse than Whit Merrifield, I guess. Sean Murphy, 9.8% barrels, way down from 15.8% in all those home runs last year. He's got 7 long balls over 187 plate appearances. Missed a big chunk of the season, but you do get good power upside out of Murph on the right day. Kelnick, 39-25, 13 home runs, but a lot of meh. 236, 290, 402, and 90 WRC plus over 401 plate appearances. It's weird how he has those bursts where it's like, finally found it. I knew it was going to happen. Finally found it. Nope, shit, he lost it. He's been just a roller coaster throughout his career in multiple stops at this point. This is a kid who was among the elite of elite prospects in his prospect class. And just, you see the talent shine through from time to time. You can see it pretty consistently the most in his contact numbers. 9.1% barrels, 44.1% hard hits this year. Last year, 9.5, 45.5. Those are good contact numbers. 13 home runs is not bad over 401 plate appearances, but a 166 ISO doesn't match that contact. 30% strikeouts and only 7% walks. You're not doing much for me there. Not getting on base consistently enough to exploit your speed, which he does have. It's just rough. It sucks seeing a player with like this much raw ability just kind of not able to truly put it together. Playable, but more a mix and match guy. Orlando Arcia, probably less than that. 11 home runs on the year, but a really disappointing season out of him. Maybe he gets 6 more along the way and gets back to that home run total from last year, but it'll still be a much lower quality season than last year. Ramon Laureano still hits the ball really hard. It's about all he does. He does have 7 home runs in 183 plate appearances, a 182 ISO, mix and match outfielder for 2,500 across sites. Gio Urshela is not much of a hitter. He is low strikeout. He might put the ball in play. Has hit 5 home runs in 329 chances this year, but you can see the low ISO, 27% worse than average creating runs. He is not a good bat. Nola freed, but it's close. Nola picks up a little bit more juice on the strikeout upside. Braves over Phillies if I had to roster the bats. But again, bad spot for both those teams in terms of the bats. Lone Wolf's got a KC stack working. KC Cleveland, I like that. Don't like that the Cleveland side is against my Yankees, but again, I do think there's a lot of lane for that Cleveland team to succeed and kind of defy that Vegas total against Nestor in Yankee Stadium tonight. So yeah, that's a pretty good combo. I like that. Where are we at? Brewers cards. I think we got these in. Got the cards, not the Brew Crew. All right, so this is the one where we were threatening to have to talk about these pitchers because they fall into the middle of the price board, and both of these teams, again, at just oddly low totals against these pitchers. Myers has a 2.81 ERA, but a 4.10 xFIP. This is the real number. On the other side, Gibby has a 4.26 ERA, a 4.01 xFIP, 21.8% strikeouts, a lot of walks, giving up a pretty aggressive hard hit rate and a lot of barrels. Kind of probably getting lucky there. The exit velo is not terrible, but it doesn't really line up with the barrels and the hard hits. Feels like that's a little lucky. Stuff Plus doesn't like either guy. 6.5 points below average for Kyle Gibson. Further than that, nearly 10 points below average for Tobias Myers, just measuring the quality of the pitches, what they do in like a physical space. If we look back in time, Gibson's just basically pitching like Kyle Gibson. There's nothing surprising here. 3.94 xFIP 2 years ago, a 4.13 last year. 4.01 is basically right in between those. 5.05 ERA, a 4.73 ERA, a 4.26 ERA. Similar for succeeding for home runs despite a little bit of hard hit rate, but he's given up more barrels this year and he's given up a higher launch angle this year. $78.81 is not terribly priced. He's facing a projected Brewers lineup with a 22.7% strikeout rate. That includes, 27.8 out of Tyler Black. If you want to skip Tyler Black, to be fair to the Brewers, it's actually 22%. Not a big gain there, but a little bit. Black remains interesting at just 2,500, 2,400 across sites. 3 positions on FanDuel is especially interesting. He hasn't succeeded in the majors yet, but he does have good numbers through the minors. A little bit of power in that bat, and a very cheap price at first base. Going up against a gettable Kyle Gibson. I think I'm going to do it again. I think I kind of lean bats here, despite those low sub-4 totals. Myers in his last start, 5 2/3, gave up 2 runs, but 2 earned, but 4 runs on 8 hits to the Dodgers. Struck out 1, walked 1. Faced the Reds, shut him out over 7 1/3, 3-hitter, 9 strikeouts. Obviously a good performance there. 2 strikeout game against the Nats, only went 5 innings. Just 1 run on 4 hits, but just 2 strikeouts. A 5 strikeout game, but only lasted 4 innings against Miami. 1 earned run on 3 hits. 5 1/3, decent start against Chicago at Wrigley, but only 5 1/3. Gave up 3 runs, only 2 of them earned. 6 strikeouts, a home run allowed. Good 8-inning start all the way back on July 10th against Pittsburgh. Had a nice little run there of depth. But has been a lot more limited. Outside of the 7 1/3, has been more limited for depth in his July and August starts. At 7 1/3 against the Reds, though, is kind of appealing. 9 strikeouts there, and again, 3 hits, no runs. Kyle Gibson, in his most recent start, faced the Reds. That same Reds team did not succeed. 6 earned runs, 7 runs allowed, 6 of them earned. 6 strikeouts, 7 hits, and 4 home runs allowed. That was at Cincinnati. Better ballpark to pitch in here, if nothing else, for Kyle Gibson. Start before that, 2 earned runs on 8 hits to the Rays, struck out 6, but that's not really an accomplishment against that team. 4 earned runs to the Cubs, but went 7 innings, gave up 5 hits, struck out 7 at Wrigley. Meh. A 0 strikeout game against the Nationals, only 2 runs on 6 hits over 5 innings, but 0 strikeouts, 3 walks. Weird one. There's only a few good starts through this season for Kyle Gibson where you'd be like, yeah, that might have won the DFS slate. Not many obvious slate winners in here. Most of his decent strikeout games, he gave up at least a few earned runs, if not, 4, and blew the quality start. I don't love it. As I said at the beginning, I kind of gave up on the idea of Kyle Gibson upside a long time ago, and I'm not really seeing the compelling reason to go back. There's a lot of good run creators in this Brewers lineup. There's a lot of decent power bats. There's some speed. Not working against Kyle Gibson's opportunity to succeed here. Do we get the Brewers on underdog? Phillies, Royals, Guardians. Nope. So assuming the Brewers is something like this, Bryce Durang at the top of the lineup has 37 steals at 322 on base, just a 94 WRC plus. Should be better than that, honestly, for run creation, given a decent on base, all that speed, the good spot at the top of the lineup. Needs to pick things up for whatever's going to make that difference and close the gap and get him above average for WRC plus by the end of the season. But a good option for DFS at second base. It's nothing position, 4,600, 3,000, not a bad price. Jackson Chourio, just 4,200 on DraftKings. We've been talking about it all season, and it really came on in the second half and has just been showing all kinds of signs and succeeding in all sorts of different aspects of hitting, basically since before the All-Star break. Started July, maybe? Wherever it was that the switch finally flipped for Chourio. He's up to 6.6% barrels, 45.5% hard hits is probably the most significant thing. The kid is always, through every level of the minors, and remember, he's 20 years old, so he's here ahead of time, has always absolutely mashed the ball. For somebody as young as he was at every level, he was just crushing the ball in terms of hard hits, exit velocity, barrel rate. And he's found that form here in the show now. He's up to 15 home runs, 17 steals in just 416 plate appearances, not even a complete sample of plate appearances, and he's already one of the team leaders in both categories. 166 ISO and climbing, 106 WRC plus and climbing. 3,100 is too cheap. I would be raving about that on FanDuel if he wasn't priced at 4,200 on DraftKings. That's absurd. He's way better than that. Get him before he's priced at 5,000. He and Vientos are basically in a race to 5,000, and news for you, he's way better than Mark Vientos. Garrett Mitchell, 3,300, 2,400, 243, 341, 364, a 103 WRC plus. Mix and match quality outfielder, not a bad lefty bat to throw at Kyle Gibson, especially if he's hitting third. Further down the lineup he falls, the less appealing he becomes. William Contreras, 5,200, 3,300, 17 homers, a 183 ISO, a 130 WRC plus from him this season. Very, very solid catcher bat. Willy Adames, a good quality, less expensive than the superstars, but still high-end shortstop, especially on DraftKings at 47. 34 is more mid-range, upper mid-range type shortstop on FanDuel. You're approaching star caliber pricing there, but he's given you a good season. 22 homers, 13 steals, 199 ISO. He's created runs 18% better than average. Solid mix and match bat who, most of the downside has already come through and normalized the numbers, and he's just having a good year. I think it's very realistic to think that he continues to put up decent numbers. He's a priority bat if you're stacking Brewers. Tyler Black, I already mentioned, has not put bat on ball well in the show at all over 54 plate appearances, but he's very cheap for his talent level. He's at least drawn some walks, 13% walk rate. Has him at a 315 on base despite 196 average in his tiny sample of plate appearances. What I care more about is the fact that he hasn't barreled the ball yet, only has a 16.1% hard hit rate in his tiny amount of batted ball events. These will go up, and he's very cheap at first base. Rhys Hoskins is obviously the more reliable power hitter. He's higher priced, but not by a ton. For the quality difference, that's a good buy. 20 home runs on the season out of Hoskins, a 206 ISO. Just looks like Rhys Hoskins to me, so no reason not to play him. Would rather have him up here somewhere, but I'll take him in the 7 spot. Sal Frelick, Joey Ortiz, solid pieces down lineup, 32-35 on DraftKings, 25-28 on FanDuel. A little bit of on-base skill out of both guys, 334 and 344 on-base percentages. Ortiz has been the more consistent run creator at 110 WRC+, but both guys can fill counting stats. 2 home runs, 16 steals out of Frelick, 8 home runs, 7 steals out of Ortiz. Playable parts at the bottom of the Brewers lineup. It really does play 7 men deep, but more mix and match there. A little mix and match, but at a good price for Tyler Black. Garrett Mitchell, same thing. But some star caliber talent still, even without Christian Yelich. On the Cards side, this version of the Cards lineup, it's fine to grab some shares against Tobias Myers. I do think that I like going to that side of it a little bit better. 3-8-3 total. Again, I come down a little bit more strongly on the side of the bats, but I could see it being another day where Myers succeeds, finds a 4 strikeout game, but ends up going 6 or 7 innings while giving up a run or no runs, 2 runs, something along those lines. And the Cards have been feeding pitchers games like that all season long. They are up to a decent team-wide WRC plus number though, 109 WRC plus for the 9-man lineup. Some of that includes the 113 out of Matt Carpenter over 126 plate appearances. It's been all right, 261, 336, 414 with 4 home runs in the tiny sample, but not really making contact like you would expect Matt Carpenter to. So I'm not really sure any of that success is real rather than just a little bit of small sample happenstance. But he's late in the lineup. Goldie having a mixed bag of a season, 19 homers, but a 160 ISO, 10 points below average for WRC+, but still a playable part, at least with his power upside, his ability to still hit the ball really hard. And then everybody above them in the lineup is actually above average now for run creation. It's a weird season out of St. Louis. Mason Wynn for 43, 3,000 is a playable part at shortstop, but not really ideal. He's not expensive, so you can get away with just, his I am a quality major leaguer, but not really a great DFS player. Level of output. You can get a good game from them, but they're not that frequent in terms of the major scoring events at a position that pretty frequently provides major scoring events from somebody on the slate. Alec Burleson, 44-31, has 21 homers, a pretty decent slash line, 185 ISO. Not a bad option in the outfield if you're stacking up against Tobias Myers. Wilson Contreras, another very high-quality catcher, 53-32, great spot in the lineup, 15 homers, a 212 ISO, major power bat, just as good on either Contreras, and they're both hitting in premium lineup spots against gettable pitchers. Brendan Donovan for 39-28, 9 home runs, 123 ISO, 107 WRC+. If you play on FanDuel and you game stack this game and you don't put both Contreras in your lineup, by the way, you're just doing it wrong. That's your catcher util. You just got to do it. Whether it succeeds or not, whether it's even the right decision or not. If you can go double Contreras, you got to do it. Arenado for just 42-28, not having a successful season, but he is up to a 103 WRC+, so he is technically above average for run creation this year, but we know the truth. 13 home runs, 268, 322, 395 with a 3.4% barrel rate, 30.2% hard hits. Come on, that's not Nolan Arenado. Lars Nootbaar, 34-27, has 8 home runs and 5 steals, a 152 ISO, a 101 WRC+. He's better than that line. He is a good multi-category contributor. He does have power. You can see the 9.3% barrels and most encouragingly 50% hard hits out of Nootbaar this year. He's very, very cheap for his talent level. Lefty bat to throw at a medium righty. Not a bad option if you're stacking up cards. I like Lars Nootbaar in between Arenado and Goldie. And, not to disparage those two veterans that much, I would play either Arenado or Goldie or both in a Cardinal stack, depending on what I'm doing with that lineup. They're just both having bad seasons at, later in their careers. Carp again, 26-24. If you believe, you can buy the upside. I'm not really a believer given the contact numbers, but he has had those weird couple of seasons of odd when I happen to be in the lineup success for home run upside. Maybe you can get some of that. Tommy Pham, a multi-category contributor, but having a mixed season, 262, 329, 393, is a positive run creator, 7 home runs, 6 steals, an okay enough wraparound play for 3,600, 2,900 in the outfield if you want it. Challenging. Despite what I've said, with the bats being a little bit favored, I think I will rank the pitchers on top, but it's all very, very close. This is a 4-corner spot, but it's very likely to just be 4 corners of that was an interesting baseball game that ended up in a 4-3 win for one of these teams, but neither pitcher got the win, neither pitcher succeeded great, but neither lineup had key DFS moments in it. This feels like that kind of a game, especially given those low totals for Vegas, but let's give it to the pitchers, in which case we'll put Tobias Myers slightly ahead of Kyle Gibson, and then we'll put the Brewers ahead of the Cardinals, and that gap is wider than the gap between the two pitchers. Yeah, Goldie's just old. Arenado's the younger of the two. Goldie's 38, I want to say. 37, about to be 37. 36 years, 11 months, and 11 days. Arenado, I think, is just 33, 32, 33? 33. 33, 4 months, and 5 days. So it's more concerning for Arenado. And like we looked at when those swing numbers came out, and I haven't checked it lately, but I'm sure that the swing tracking is basically the same, given we haven't seen much of an uptick in anything from Arenado. He just has the longest, or one of the longest, in terms of just the actual arc that the bat takes, and slowest swings in all of baseball. You can be one of those things and still be elite. You can't be both of those things and be elite at the same time. That's why he's at a 3.4% barrel rate and a 30.2% hard hit rate. His swing is just not good. And that I don't know if that used to be the case and he found success with it because it was a little bit better and it was good enough, or if there's a dramatic drop off because we don't have those numbers from previous seasons. That's a new metric that they put out, but it's really concerning, especially as somebody who has a Nolan Arenado for another season in Dynasty for like $44 against our $400 cap next year. It's a big problem. Let's see if we got these lineups. I do want to talk about these teams. Looks like no. Let me reload and find out. Oh, and going back to what you asked there. Where is that? Exit Philo. Where the hell is that swing thing? I don't want to take too much time and look for this. Fat tracking. There it is. Yeah, so Goldie's still got a pretty decent bat speed mark, which makes all the difference. Swing length, I forget how. I don't have shading on the swing length, so swings, bat speed. Yeah, so Goldie's still above average bat speed. He's like 73rd percentile. And Arenado, and maybe it has climbed a little bit. It's the 70th percentile. Right around the average now. .8 swing length, 8.3. Where's the swing length one? Total swing percentage. I don't need to spend too much time on this. Looks like Arenado's swing has improved a little bit. He doesn't swing and miss a lot. You got to give him credit for that. Does still manage to put the bat on the ball, but just not a great season. Where does that rank? I want to see that whole. Yeah, so by average bat speed in miles per hour on competitive swings, Arenado is at 70.8 miles per hour, right next to Zach Neto, Logan O'Hoppe, Orlando Arcia, Michael Garcia, Willie Castro. Not terrible bats. The bottom end of that board is Luis Arraez, who is at 63 miles an hour, and Stephen Kwan at 64.5. They bookend Nicky Lopez, who we don't need to talk about. But that's an example, and there's also guys like Justin Turner, Nolan Shanuel, Keibert Ruiz, Bryce Turank, Sal Frelick up there. Ernie Clement is up there. Those are guys who, those are the extreme back control type guys. So like I said, you can succeed with a slow swing, but it can't be a long swing. So if you resort by swing length, those guys all have short swings. So their efficiency of their swing delivers the bat to the ball with a lot of back control and in time to find the base hits. And then if you go by swing length, Arenado is third longest swing at 8.3 feet on swing length. The longest swing in baseball is Giancarlo Stanton. But Giancarlo Stanton has the fastest average bat speed at 81 miles an hour. Number 2, for the record, is remember when I said before when we were talking about the Yankees that Giancarlo Stanton hits the ball really, really hard? And I didn't say it, but it is quite possibly harder than anybody else in baseball. The numbers actually back that up. 81 miles an hour, again, leads all of baseball for average bat speed on competitive swings. Number 2 is O'Neal Cruz at 78.3. Aaron Judge is at 77 miles an hour. So on average, Giancarlo Stanton is swinging the ball 4 miles an hour faster than Aaron Judge is. He's also got, again, the longest. So Giancarlo Stanton, with all his power output, has the longest swing, but also the fastest swing. So again, you can be one of those things, but you can't be both of them. And Arenado falls into the both of them. He's got the third longest swing and the 68th slowest swing. And a lot of that is, a difference of 2-3 miles an hour. So that's why Nolan Arenado's not delivering anymore. Goldie is 7.8 swing feet and 72.4 miles an hour of bat speed. So it's a little bit more manageable. The slightly shorter swing, the slightly faster swing go together a little bit better for Goldie. It's a great board, by the way. I'm going to drop the link to it in chat. Yes, Lara, I am actually dropping it on... that's the leaderboard for that stat. It's their new bat tracking numbers that came out earlier this year. All right, so back to the slate as a whole. Tigers. It's going to be an opener, and then I believe Kenta Maeda's coming out. If we have confirmation of somebody different, let me know in chat. It's been 5 days since Maeda last pitched in relief, and this is his new role, so this is who I'm expecting. But if it's somebody else, let me know. I believe it's Boberski opening the game. If it's Maeda, I see no real appeal, and I think that does lend some upside to the Cubs bats. They were pulling a 4+ implied total. Again, the wind is blowing in, but lighter than it was yesterday. Just a 7.5 run total for the game, but the Cubbies at a 4.16 against the bullpen and probably Kenta Maeda. Last time out, 5 2/3 in bulk relief. He one hit the Mariners, struck out 5, walked 1. 2 runs allowed over 4 2/3 of bulk relief at San Francisco. Just 3 runs against Kansas City and 3 2/3 of bulk relief. A good 1-run bulk relief performance over 5 innings against the Twins. Struck out 4, gave up just 1 earned run in that one, 5 hits. He's been better in this bulk relief role, but still, I think he's targetable enough, and I don't really see the upside at 5,000, 6,000. Maybe if you are desperate for value darts in the bargain bin on DraftKings and you know for sure that he's going to be taking the mound at 5,000, you can throw that a few times, given the idea that maybe you're getting a few innings, maybe you can pick off a win there and get to your 5 strikeouts, but it's pretty thin. On FanDuel, I just don't think you do it. I just don't play bulk relievers on FanDuel. Jamison Taillon on the other side, 84, 8,000. Again, this is a guy having a pretty decent season. 3.62 ERA, but a 4.17 xFIP is probably the truth of who he is. 19.1% strikeout, basically in line with where he's been in the past. He was a couple points higher last year, a little bit higher the year before that, but not far off the mark at 19.1. 4.8% walks is very good. He doesn't give up a ton of free passes, which is my concern with the Tigers. If you go to them for offense, how much do they end up sequencing? How many guys do we get on base if they do manage to exploit some power from some of these good young lefty bats? So I think there's upside. I know for sure that they're cheap. I know they make a lot of things work positionally with some other interesting stacks on the board. I kind of lean Tigers, but it would not surprise me at all if Jamison Taillon had a very good day against this Tigers team, and he projects very well for the money. 8,400 for nearly 15 DK points in the median, 8,000 for 28 and change on FanDuel. Those are very good projections for those prices. So he's very much on the board, but for the value stack, the Tigers are kind of drawing the eye. You get Kerry Carpenter in the heart of the lineup, big lefty bat with a ton of premium contact, has done over the past couple of years in terms of hitting the ball very hard too. So it's not an illusion over 186 plate appearances. He's hit 11 home runs. He's got a 304 ISO. That's probably going to come down some. But this is a lefty who has hit the ball very hard over the past couple of seasons, has good home run upside, 10 plus in the home run model for just 3,000 in the outfield on FanDuel, 4,200 on DraftKings. Pretty ideal bat there. Parker Meadows at the top of the lineup if he's hitting up there, 32-28, mix and match caliber, 4 home runs, 9 steals, more talent than that, but hasn't really found it at the major league level. Decent opportunity to succeed against Taillon, though, and find a day. Lowest priority out of the lefties in this lineup, though. Riley Green is a top priority bat, 5,000, 3,100. You don't want to skip Riley Green. 17 home runs, a 216 ISO, 131 WRC+. Their best and most established firm feet on the ground major league hitter right now. Matt Vierling at 4,000, 2,900, knocked 14 homers this year, a 178 ISO, 101 WRC+. He's more a mix and match caliber guy. Had a nice little outburst for home runs, but he's only okay. 2,900, not a bad price. Outfield, third base. Same thing at 4,000 on DraftKings, but more just another outfielder over there. I'm more interested in Colt Keith. 3,700, 2,800 at second base is a great buy on either side. 429 plate appearances. He's hit 11 home runs and 95 WRC plus. But we've seen games throughout that with a lot of upside out of him, and he is a very good young player. Premium, top end prospect when they brought him up break camp. Carrying a 17.9% strikeout rate if you need something to kind of cling to here. 429 plate appearances. There's a lot of talent there for the money, and you just stick him in at second base, and it makes things work. If you want to get cheaper than that, Jace Young, 2 spots later, 2,200, 2,300. Third base on DraftKings, so you play them together. Second base on FanDuel, you can play them together in the second base and util spot in what would most definitely be a unique construction, or you go either or at the second base spot. You can save 500 by going to Young. He's another very, very high-end prospect for this team. 16 good plate appearances so far, no counting stats to speak of, but a 128 WRC plus, driven in a run. So, a little something there. Same can be said for Trey Sweeney at just 2,100 on both sides. Shortstop only on both. Not ideal, but another kid who has hit the ball pretty well in the minor leagues and is a well-established prospect for this team. So going down the lineup, there's some good options there. In the 6th spot in this projected version, 4,100, 2,800 for Spencer Torkelson, having a terrible season, 242 plate appearances of just awfulness in the show this year. That's coming off a year last year where he jumped up to 31 home runs in his second season in the show. Was bad enough to get him self-sent back down to AAA this year. In AAA this year, he had 11 home runs in 275 plate appearances, a 204 ISO, a 107 WRC plus, got on base at a 356 clip. Looked a lot more like the hitter that we saw last year. He's just cheap now. I'll forgive a young player 242 bad plate appearances or 200 bad plate appearances from earlier in the season. There's a lot of talent there. So, I mean, that is a very good stretch of hitters, and that is a very good hitter. And I say a very good stretch of hitters, meaning there's talent here. I don't know what it ultimately becomes at the major league level, but I think you get me. And they're all very cheap. Veerling is playable. Parker Meadows is playable. Jake Rogers is mix and match, but you do get at least a little bit of sneaky power upside. 11.8% barrels, 42.9% hard hits, 9 homers and 251 plate appearances. Take what you get. I think the Tigers are a little bit interesting. The one thing I don't love is the multiple outfielders. The requirement to go outfielders for a lot of their quality bats doesn't stack well with the Yankees. You get 4 outfielders in, so you got to go Carpenter Green, and then you're looking at blocking off the util spot if you're going with 2 of the Yankees outfielders, but then you only get 2 of the 3 Yankees outfielders. These were the problems I was wrestling with that lineup that I built pre-show. Still not sure I end up going with the Tigers, but I do think they're in play given how cheap they are and how interesting all of those young left-handed bats are. Again, all the guys I talked about, Green, Carpenter, Keith, Young, Sweeney, all lefties. To throw Jamison Tyon, at best, non-threatening righty, a hittable righty, Tigers are on the board. Cubbies, disappointing again yesterday. Just 3 runs, no homer. 10.57 again coming back today for Ian Happ. I'll take the upside on it again. I made him the home run pick from the Cubs, not the home run pick of the day today, but I made him the Cubs home run pick. 22 homers on the season. Giancarlo Stanton, by the way, is the home run pick of the day. 221 ISO for Ian Happ, a 123 WRC plus. Love the player. 339 on base. He's very, very good. Possibly underrated. Good outfielder. 4,600, 3,400. Nice way to start off a Cub stack against a very hittable situation. Their run total at 4.16 honestly could be a little bit higher. A little bit of Wrigley Field probably worming its way in there. Michael Busch at 42.28. Tons of power upside. 8.50 in the home run model. That's drawn against Maeda. 16 homers for him on the season, a 196 ISO. You get a 201 ISO with 16 homers from, say, a Suzuki. Tons and tons of barrels and hard hits out of all 3 of those guys. Not a bad 3-man off the top, especially on DraftKings for just 4,500 apiece. Honestly, Cody Bellinger is mispriced at 54. But let's say you skipped him and went for the third baseman and the second baseman there. That puts your 5-man price at 4,400 apiece for these Cubs. Let's say you wanted to reserve, second base for a cheaper option. You went with Dansby at 33. 4,200 apiece. cheap team to build with. Not necessarily Tigers cheap, but not far off that mark, especially if you're skipping Cody. Cody's good. 13 home runs, a 154 ISO's okay, a 112 WRC plus, but I don't know that it justifies the 5,400. I think we've talked about this a few times. Like, put those numbers next to Mark Vientos. You can do that. Mark Vientos, who, as we know, is under 5,000 again today. Better average. Fewer runs scored, I guess, but 6 more home runs. Same amount of RBIs, fewer stolen bases. 1 point better for on-base percentage, way better for slug, way better ISO, 147 WRC plus compared to a 112 WRC plus. Fewer plate appearances, all in by 116. Which one of these guys is having the better season? Which one of these guys should be priced at 5,400? Stupid. Anyway. But Bellinger's playable even at that price. 3,200 on FanDuel, just one of the guys on the Cubs. No objection to that price at all. Outfield and first base looks pretty playable. Isaac Paredes for 3,000 is playable for his home run upside. 18 on the season, a 183 ISO, 8.89 in the home run model, fairly low strikeout, high walk. Gets involved, a 119 WRC plus. He can do more than just hit home runs. Nico gets on at a decent clip, 321 on base, but just creating runs 9% worse than average. Not a great season. A little bit of counting stat upside with the stolen bases. Dansby at 33.27, not a good season. 10 home runs, 10 stolen bases, just an 86 WRC plus. Really disappointing this year. Still is hitting the ball hard, but that's all he's really doing. Crow Armstrong, more of a defender. Miguel Amaya, mix and match quality catcher at best. 5 home runs apiece from those guys. Armstrong does have the 20, or Crow Armstrong does have the 23 stolen bases, but both guys at just 66 WRC plus at the bottom of the lineup. Cubs bats, Jameson Taillon, Tigers bats. But I probably have Taillon and Tigers bats a lot closer than anybody else might. Oops. Don't want to shortchange the Angels fans out there and not talk about Johnny Cueto. Mr. Cueto, let's see. He's pitched for 2 different teams, Texas and the Angels in AAA this season. He's 38 now. He made 8 AAA starts for the Rangers, 38 innings, had a 5.92 ERA with a 5.23 xFIP. Had a... got to do a lot of scrolling. This is a long career history. 18.8% strikeout rate with a 5% walk rate in those AAA starts. And then in 4 starts since joining the Angels, 23 1/3 in AAA, a 3.09 ERA, but a 5.02 xFIP, and a 14.9% strikeout rate against a 5% walk rate. Don't think we're going to throw 38-year-old Johnny Cueto in this spot against the very, very, very good Kansas City Royals, who have no real strikeout upside for opposing pitchers on most slates, particularly not one who's completely washed at this point. I don't want to talk too negatively about Johnny Cueto because he's the kind of guy that would go out there and post a monster 9-inning start and strike out 12 just to do that to me. So don't want to. I'll temper it a little bit, but I don't think we're going there for DFS. Michael Lorenzen at 77.74, 11% walks, 17.7% strikeouts, a 3.68 ERA. He looks good, but a 5.01 xFIP is the more correct, more believable number. Limited swinging strikes, limited strikes overall, not great by stuff, plus giving up a lot of home runs on a fly ball trajectory with a bunch of barrels, just under the mark for hard hits, a little bit further below the mark for exit velo, but not a good pitcher. Facing an Angels team that, again, just got to Cole Ragans yesterday. They've got enough that I don't love the idea of throwing Lorenzen at them. I think it's moderately playable just given where he's priced and the short nature of the slate when it comes to some of these value guys, but you could probably do better. There is a 28.1% strikeout rate to keep in mind, but he's very low strikeout overall. Last year, 17.8% strikeouts over 153 innings in 25 starts. Year before, 20.7% was his best number. 97 2/3 innings that year, but not a good strikeout pitcher. Only moderate threat for his, for him to pitch clean innings, but I don't know what kind of ceiling there is here. And doesn't particularly pitch deep into games most of the time. 5 2/3 in his last one. 3 strikeouts, 3 walks, just 1 earned on 2 hits, but only went 5 2/3. Got the win, no quality start. 4 1/3, 3 earned runs on 6 hits to start before that. That was against St. Louis. 5 2/3 of decent pitching against the Tigers, but didn't complete the quality start. 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 earned run on 5 hits. has not finished the 6th inning since June 18th. Number of 5-inning starts in there. They let him pitch into the 6th in 2 out of his last 3, but he didn't finish it. I feel like that's your danger point, particularly on FanDuel, that quality start. Again, I do think even for your value guys, that quality start, given that extreme high end that the pitching board has, is going to be pretty key. They're going to need those extra points. So I don't love it at 74. I think it's loosely playable, but a questionable ceiling. 77 is more in play on DraftKings because I think the 5 innings is at least moderately secure. Then you're just dealing with talent and outcome. But I think the probability of pitching 5 innings is there. Stacking Angels, not a terrible idea against Lorenzen. Stacking Royals, a very, very good idea against Johnny Cueto. The Royals have the highest run total on the board at 5.18, definitely appealing. Just 3.93 for the Angels. I would have bought 4+ against Michael Lorenzen. We can give him a little bit more than that. We juiced it to 9.5. Push the Royals up a little bit more. I would think that this is more where the Angels belong. A little bit over 4. Not a terrible spot. There are some decent bats, especially for DFS purposes, like Zach Neto with his 19 home runs, his 22 steals, 203 ISO, a 121 WRC+, been easily their best player this season. Logan O'Hoppe, their catcher, a few spots down the lineup in this projected form is not a bad option. Do we have this? We don't. We do have the Royals. So O'Hoppe's not bad. There's a lot of dregs in the middle with guys like Brandon Drury if he's in the lineup, Anthony Rendon if he makes the lineup today. Don't really want much of either one of those guys, and they hit in kind of key spots in the lineup, at least Rendon if he's hitting 5th. Drury hitting 7th, I would rather have either Adele or Moniak there. But Taylor Ward up top, 3,800, 2,700, even with the struggles. A little bit of power upside, 16 homers on the season, 98 WRC+, and 160 ISO. He's better than those two numbers. 12.3% barrels and 43.5% hard hits. I'll submit as evidence of that. Definitely some upside at 3,800, 2,700 against Michael Lorenzen. Nolan Shanuel is one of those back control, slow swing type guys. 250, 346, 375. He's doing all right with it. Still finding his form. He has hit 12 home runs as well, so a little bit of upside. 35-27, not a bad price for the first baseman. 106 WRC+. Really pulled his season together nicely. Figured things out a lot at the plate as the season went along. Nico Cavadas, we looked at him yesterday, a little power upside, 6.05 in the home run model, one of the team leaders today. You get, 4 guys above 6, 5 guys above 6? That's not terrible. Dead mid price for the lefty bat on DraftKings at first base, 2,100 on FanDuel. You can't get him and Shanuel in the same lineup on DraftKings, but that's a reasonable sacrifice to save 1,500 and go to the power bat rather than the back control guy. I don't mind doing that pretty frequently on DraftKings, honestly. 21 save 600. You can obviously put them together on FanDuel if you wanted to, but the same pivot, take the power upside over the back control guy for 600 less. I don't mind that. Rendon is just basically dead to me, but he is probably going to be hitting that spot in the lineup. Has not hit a home run this year, has a .044 ISO and a 71 WRC+, so don't really know what you would want from him, but he's there. Drury is similarly empty for the season. These are guys, once upon a time, Anthony Rendon was maybe not MVP caliber, but, very, very high-end hitter, and Brandon Drury was at least a 20 home run guy. Both guys just totally lost this season. In between, O'Hoppe, again, 41 is a very, very good price for a catcher with power and this kind of premium contact. 11% barrels, 46.7% hard hits. The hard hit number exactly matches last year's output. Barrels are down a little bit, but that was a small sample number. That was 199 plate appearances. He hit 14 home runs. This year he's got 17 in 420 chances. Pulling together a nice season. 2,800, you can match him in, but you've already got 2 playable first basemen, so it gets a little bit thinner there. Mickey Moniak, not all that good, 28-25, has 8 homers and 6 steals, but a 72 WRC+. Joe Adell's better given the counting stat upside, 18 homers and 14 steals, just an 87 WRC+, but there is elite talent in Joe Adell, 3,200, 2,800. If you're going to the Angels, I'm typically inclined to put Joe Adell in my lineup. You can see the killer contact that he makes. He's got blazing speed. He's got all the tools you could want. He just is not good at putting it all together at the same time, unfortunately. The confirmed Royals lineup has our guy Mike Massey at the top for just 4,200, 2,900 at second base. Definitely could take shares of the lefty here. That's a killer opportunity against the pitcher like Johnny Cueto. 14.9% strikeouts, 3.3% walks. Hits the ball hard enough for my purposes. 10 home runs on the year, a 199 ISO from the second baseman, and he's cheap to start a Royal stack off. That's a great spot. Bobby Witt makes up for the price, and that's where the Massey money goes. 6,600 on DraftKings, 4,700 on FanDuel. 25 homers, 25 steals, 266 ISO, 176 WRC plus. He's obviously fantastic. Vinny Pasquantino, the left-handed Alec Bohm, 18 home runs, 189 ISO, 111 WRC plus, striking out 12.8%, hard hits 45.8%. That's what I love about Vinny is all the well-struck balls in play. Just 4,800 on DraftKings is cheap. 3,400 is more realistic on FanDuel, but it's still pretty inexpensive. 7.77 in the home run model for the slot machine fans out there. 3,000 for Sal, catcher and first base on DK is helpful. 22 home runs out of him, a 193 ISO, 116 WRC plus. Catcher and first base is irrelevant on FanDuel. Him and Vinny conflicting at that first base util situation is always. It's fine if you're going to a team where you don't want to have a second really good shortstop and go like Witt. I know he's not available, but Corey Seager or somebody like that, Whit Lindor. Because you need the util spot for that, obviously. So as I've talked about, that does limit you from putting Sal and Vinny into the same lineup. It would be nice to find one of them in the outfield one day to get that positional eligibility added. But if you're just going to Royals and, I don't know, some other team that doesn't have a high-end shortstop, then it's less problematic because you just go Vinny and util Sal at the catcher first base or vice versa. MJ, pretty good premium contact bat, 8.5% barrels and 43.2% hard hits from the left side. 14 homers and a 199 ISO. We know all of his flaws. 24.6% strikeouts. He's actually improved that by coming up on 4 points. 28.2% last year. Some of that downside is gone. 11.4% barrels last year. He's actually underperforming the contact, but the contact is still very, very good. He's had mixed opportunities, 361 plate appearances this year. Not at all consistent, but probably not as bad as he maybe gets diminished to, both by some of the pricing and by some of his popularity. 34.28 is a pretty good price for the upside, especially when he's hitting fifth in this lineup. So I don't mind some MJ. Outfielder, he's a little bit more than just another outfielder at those prices. Hunter Renfroe, 36.26, has 11 homers, a 156 ISO. Pulled things together a little bit, 233, 305, 390, but he's more of a mix and match outfielder. Adam Frazier is kind of meh down lineup. Michael Garcia has a lot of talent in the infield, second base, third base for 44, 2,800 same positions on FanDuel. You can pick off a little bit of counting stat upside. 6 home runs, 30 steals, a 71 WRC plus, and a 104 ISO, though. Problematic numbers on the back end there, but some counting stat ability. Cal Isbell, just a mix and match or skippable outfielder at the end. 7 home runs, 9 steals, 17% worse than average for runs. This goes Royals bats, Angels bats. If you're playing a pitcher, it's Michael Lorenzen, but I really don't think you need to go there. Rays and the A's. Neither lineup is in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. I would say definitely Rendon, Lair. Just because Chris Bryant at least cares about playing baseball. Or at least, as far as I know. He's not publicly out there saying, I wish I wasn't a baseball player, I don't like baseball. But I think the worst MLB contract is probably indisputably Javi Baez. So Ryan Pepiot going to be really popular against this A's team. He's got a 26.5% strikeout rate over 92 2/3, 18 starts this year, a 3.69 ERA with a 3.92 xFIP, 24.9% strikeout rate for the projected version of the A's lineup on the other side. Feeds some upside in Pepiot's direction. Second start back, he went 5 1/3 on the 16th, though, so no real issues as far as pitch count goes or any concerns about that. 5 strikeouts, a walk in that game, gave up 2 unearned runs on 5 hits. Start before he hit the IL on the 14th of July was against Cleveland. He struck out 4, 6 shutout innings, 2-hitter. Has a lot of upside, a lot of potential, a lot of good strikeout games, 7, 8, 9 strikeout games throughout the season. So pretty high-end pitcher for just 83, 82 against a really super gettable version of the A's. Or a super gettable A's lineup, I should say. This is the regular version of the A's. They do have power. You can throw a little bit of that against Pepio and his 9.2% barrel rate, his 18-degree average launch angle. It's just under the magic number for both exit velo and hard hits. You could argue that he's gotten a little bit lucky here, but he's good at keeping hitters off balance with his pitch arsenal. So I think that feeds into a little bit of that. But when they have squared him up, they've definitely driven the ball. So you can see some home run upside for Brent Rooker, some home run upside for Shea Langoliers, a little bit around Lawrence Butler's, the J.J. Bledays of the world, the Zach Gelofs of the world. But overall, it looks like a very high-end spot for Pepio. He's going to be popular, but I think it's worth eating the chalk. There are plenty of ways to get different on this slate, even if it doesn't come on the mound. There's so many ways to get different with quality enough bats against gettable enough pitchers. So I'm not really sweating the Pepio ownership. I don't know what it is, but I'm not sweating it. Let's check. Let's see what RG thinks of the Pepio ownership. It's only 5:17 and we're on the next to last game. I feel like we've got endless time. Granted, that means we'll finish at like 6 o'clock. What? Oh, that's FanDuel. All right. It's a realistic ownership number on FanDuel, but sub 20%. Lower than I thought it would be. Oh, all right. It didn't change. I'm clicking in the wrong spot. That's why. It didn't change because I didn't ask it to change. Now we're on DraftKings. Wow. That is a totally manageable ownership number. He's not anywhere near as owned as I thought he would be. I suspect that RG has this pretty light for whatever reason. He's going to be more popular than this. They've got him in the low 20s on DraftKings. Jack Flaherty, far and away the most popular pitcher on that slate. More than double the Pepio number. Excuse me. I think Pepio's probably coming in more like 30 plus on DK. That feels really light to have him in the low 20s. If he's actually owned in the low 20s, somebody, if you have eyeballs on it on another site, let me know. But that feels really low. Is he above like 30% on, say, Osimo? Or wherever you guys are looking? Pepio on DraftKings. I'm just curious because that RG number feels low and would make him an absolute smash priority play if he's owned in the low 20s on DK. Mid-teens, this I believe in. Ricky, you spelled stochastic wrong. It's CH. Low 20s. Interesting. I think he should be more popular than that if these prices take advantage. I would load up. I would go over the field on Pepio at that ownership number then. 8,300, 8,200 is a great opportunity. Again, there is a little bit of power challenge, obviously. Brent Rooker's an elite power bat. Gets on base at a 362 clip. Langoliers is just a power bat. Gelof hits for a little bit of power. That's not bad, though, getting him that low owned. I thought he was going to be easily over 30 on DraftKings, and I thought he'd be over 20 on FanDuel. Shocking. Probably just speaks to... Yeah, Flaherty's over 50 on the other side. Yeah, that's surprising. I was expecting Flaherty to be really high owned, but I guess people are just finding their way to additional Flaherty shares through the fact that so many bats are cheap on this slate. There are a lot of fairly low-end teams in play, so it does make sense that it's easy to get to cheap bats. That's why I was looking at the Tigers, because I think they're a little bit underappreciated for the talent in that lineup now, in terms of those cheap, bad teams. We've got two of them on the board in this game. The Rays are bad, the A's are bad. Let's talk Mitch Spence at 6,500, 6,400. He's got an 18.8% strikeout rate, a 4.64 ERA, but a 4.26 xFIP that's a little bit more appealing. He's right on the nose for average stuff. 10.5% swinging strike rate. Could do better as a strike thrower overall. 24.2% CSW isn't making anybody happy, but only walking 7.4%. That's not disastrous. 9.9 degree average launch isn't terrible. 8% barrels is a little higher than we want. So is the 41.4% hard hits, the 89.8 miles an hour of exit velo, but he's kept the ball down just enough that the 3.25% home runs isn't terrible, and it's kind of believable given that average launch angle. I don't think Mitch Spence is a terrible idea here at those cheap prices against a team with a 24.7% strikeout rate for this projected version of the lineup. There's plenty of upside. We've seen a lot of pitchers succeed against the Rays here. It's a different version of the Rays with some of the promotions. Junior Caminero is supposed to be a very good hitter. 30 plate appearances, he hasn't been great yet, but he hasn't struck out much. 16.7% strikeouts, 16.7% walks so far. We'll see what he becomes. But there are plenty of strikeouts through the heart of this lineup, some of their best hitters. Could be a little bit of a bonus upside day for Spence at those cheap prices. He's nothing more than an SP2. A lot less of a consideration on FanDuel. Just 2 2/3 in his most recent start because he only struck out 1. He walked 3, gave up 5 earned runs on 4 hits in the short outing. Start before that, though, he went 5 2/3 at Toronto. He gave up 2 earned runs on 8 hits, struck out just 2, but that's not a terrible start for the cheap price. 5 2/3 against the Dodgers before that. He struck out 6. 2 earned runs on 5 hits, 3 walks. It's like a medium overall start, but it came against the Dodgers. You weren't expecting that from Mitch Spence against the Dodgers. Against the A's, he was very good. 3 strikeouts and 2 walks, home run allowed, but only 1 earned on 3 hits. He's capable of giving you 6 good innings here against the Rays for a cheap price. The Rays are also capable of hitting a few over the wall and ruining his day completely. I would hedge any Mitch Spence position with a little bit of Rays stack in other lineups. It's a lot less of a priority with Pepio, but I would probably do it given the fact that there's a little bit of power upside for the A's and they'll be way lower owned and they're also cheap. But yeah, I think Mitch Spence for 65, 64, not the worst idea. FanDuel, again, is limited by that lack of quality start upside. He's gotten it once. Went 6 innings in that one, but it wasn't a quality start. Twice. 6 innings in that one, but it wasn't a quality start. He's completed the 6 inning, 4 times? And he's gotten quality starts in 2 of those. And a number of fairly short starts in there. You got to take the bad with the good with these $6,500 bargain bin pitchers, but I'm a lot more concerned about any kind of actual upside on FanDuel. I think probably you're looking just around the median. And again, I think with your value pitcher, you're going to want that quality start bonus. 65 on DraftKings plays completely differently. That is a decent value SP2. If you go to the Rays, which again, think it's a good idea if you're rostering any Mitch Spence, even if you're not, totally playable. 37-29 for Johnny Diaz off the top. He's got a 123 ISO and just 10 home runs and 506 chances this year, slashing 275, 332, 398. The on base isn't bad in a vacuum, but it's lower than what we would expect out of him. 112 WRC plus, again, not bad in a vacuum, but low for him. Disappointing year. Has come down in terms of his contact as well. 9.5% barrels down to 7%, 54% hard hits down to 49.5%, but still elite level of hard hits and doesn't really strike out at 15.6%. He's just underperformed his season so far, but there is a lot of any given slate upside when you can have Yandy Diaz for those cheap prices. So I do like him off the top of the lineup. Brandon Lau, 49-36, has 16 homers, a 252 ISO, and just 301 plate appearances. Tremendous power bat at second base. You can have him at first base also for 49 on DraftKings. Chris Morel fits in at second base for just 4,100 on DK, 2,800 is second or third base on FanDuel. Sub Mendoza and sub 300 on base isn't good. 15 points below average for run creation isn't good. 20 home runs and 495 plate appearances, though. I can see the upside. Little silver lining there with all the bad. Josh Lowe, 39-31, 7 homers, 17 steals. Much better year last year than he's had over 248 plate appearances this year. But there's ability there for the cheap prices. It's not a bad option. And he has barreled the ball and hit it pretty hard in his limited sample this year. Just striking out a lot more and hasn't found the consistency yet. Again, Caminero is one of the top prospects in all of baseball. Just give him a little bit of time to find his footing. 2,400, you can absolutely play him at third base on FanDuel. 3,100, same thing on DraftKings. 6.86 is maybe a little bit low for him in the home run model. We'll find out. Dylan Carlson, 3,026, just another outfielder at best. Johnny DeLuca, same thing. Taylor Walls, same thing at shortstop, and probably wouldn't play him there on DraftKings. 25, maybe you can mix him into a few lineups on FanDuel, but pretty limited, over 172 chances this year. Alex Jackson, you can maybe pick off a little bit of contact, 10.1% barrels, but it's only amounted to 3 home runs and 140 plate appearances and a 119 ISO. So really it's a 5-man lineup up at the top. A couple of meh caliber guys and then a couple of tough to play guys. For the A's, Lawrence Butler, 36-27, 13 homers, 10 steals. Still at a 110 WRC plus and a 209 ISO. Not a bad lefty to throw at Ryan Pepiot if you're rostering A's. But fairly high strikeout, 26.3%. Could kind of play right into Pepiot's hands. Rooker's also really high strikeout, but he's having a great year. 287, 362, 566, 29 home runs. Killer contact. Definitely a good option. Your top priority A's bat if you're stacking them. Could ruin Pepiot's day, but Pepiot could definitely find success and strike him out a few times. JJ Bleday at just 41-28, 6.39 in the home run model. He's hit 16 in 500 plate appearances, 200 ISO right on the nose, and 19 points above average for run creation this year. Not a bad third man in, low strikeout, fairly high walk. Reasonable option. 4,027 for Miguel Andujar. He's skippable, but he's also playable. 283, 320, 381, 102 WRC plus. Just not aiming for much power. Doesn't really do anything overly interesting other than put the ball in play, but that can be interesting for the right price. I prefer him probably as a $2,700 first baseman, oddly, than a $4,000 outfielder or even in the outfield over here. Langoliers at 44-29 has 22 catcher home runs, a 230 ISO, 111 WRC plus. Excellent contact bat, but fairly high strikeout, fairly inconsistent in terms of on base, hitting for average or anything else. Seth Brown, good lefty with power down lineup, 28-25 is a nice price. 10 home runs and 282 chances. He's underperformed even that amount of plate appearances. But in the past, we've seen him put up elite contact numbers and hit a bunch of home runs while also stealing a few bases. So plenty of DFS upside as long as he stays cheap. And even as his price climbs, he should already be more expensive than these prices just based on career history. So I'm a buyer on Seth Brown in A stacks. Honestly, if I needed a cheap one-off, I would consider him at those prices. I just don't love drawing against Pepiot, but he's capable. Zach Geloff, 34-29, 15 homers, 15 steals, playable part at second base. Darrell Arnaiz, Max Schumann, mix and match options at the bottom of the lineup. Pepiot way up top, especially now that I know he's not crazy high owned, at least as far as everybody seems to be projecting it. I tend to think everybody's wrong about that. We'll see. Mitch Spence on the board for value, mostly on DraftKings. I don't know if I would put Spence above the bats, though. I'm going to do that. I'm going to put Mitch Spence above the bats. Ryan Pepiot, Mitch Spence, Rays bats, A's bats. Last game up, and again, to clarify, for anybody new, or anybody not paying attention all this time, not to say Mitch Spence is a good pitcher, not even to say he's a really good option, just saying that he's really cheap against a really bad team with a bunch of strikeouts. He's got a little bit of a lane to 5 and change good innings. 6 inning will be crucial on FanDuel. Mariners against Jack Flaherty. Logan Gilbert pitching for the Mariners against the Dodgers. Doesn't look like we've got either of these lineups in yet. 2 premium pitchers, our most expensive pitchers on the slate, our highest projected pitchers on the slate. Got to wait to the end of the lineup to find out what's going to happen, or the end of the night to find out what's going to happen with this one. Not only do you have the Dodgers at a reasonably high total for this slate with all the talent in their lineup, but you've got 2 of the absolute key pitchers to this slate going. 3.06 ERA with a 2.59 xFIP for Jack Flash, 32.2% strikeouts, throwing him up against the team that we've been picking on all season long for strikeout upside, 25.9% for this projected version of the Mariners lineup. That includes Justin Turner, 17.8%. Everybody that you care about in this lineup is mid-20s or above, so definitely a good target for Jack Flaherty, and he's been pitching fantastically through most of the season. Just a 4.7% walk rate, tremendous 14.1% swinging strike, 31.9% CSW. He's elite at limiting contact, inducing weak and medium contact, limiting exit velo. The 3.90% home runs is actually a little of an uptick, a little bit of a surprise given these contact numbers. That's unlucky. Flaherty's tremendous. It's a great spot against Seattle. On the other side, Logan Gilbert, 25.2% strikeouts. Another very good strikeout pitcher and a very low walk. Strong strikeout to walk ratio pitcher. It's what these Mariners are geared for. 2.96 ERA with a 3.35 xFIP. Pitching great. 14.4% swinging strike rate. Just as strong for swinging strikes as his opponent. A little bit lighter in the CSW department, but that's by no means a bad number. And the walks are obviously spectacular. He's been just as good at limiting premium contact, and he's had more success. You can see, with similar numbers for both of these guys, actually fewer hard hits for Flaherty. less exit velo, but a few more barrels. That's where just some of the happenstance comes in to push that number of full percentage point higher on the home run mark for Flaherty. Gilbert's tremendous. He's just in a much, much tougher matchup. For 300 less on FanDuel, that's kind of a stark difference. For 1,000 less on DraftKings, I am a little bit warmer to the possibility of taking Gilbert over Flaherty. But more often than not, and as you can see, the public is doing it about 50% of the time on all sites projections, which I totally believe in. Most people are going to default to Flaherty here for the money, and so am I. I think it makes a ton of sense. Looking at the top of the Mariners lineup, Victor Robles, 36-28, has 18 stolen bases, getting on at a 330 clip. Needs to continue doing so and providing those counting stats. Played his way out of Washington after being one of the top prospects in all of baseball going back to 2019, but he remains cheap and he remains playable as long as he's leading off ahead of Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, Randy Arozarena, and whatever other group of hitters they put in the lineup. Julio's still a priority, 48,300. You're getting him at a very good price for his talent. 11 home runs, 18 steals, 106 ISO, 101 WRC+. Not the season that anyone wanted him to have over 446 plate appearances, but he's still very capable. 9.5% barrels and 46.8% hard hits as evidence. Cal Raleigh, 16.8% barrels, 50.5% hard hits. Ton of strikeouts, but a decent number of walks. 27 homers, 303 on base, 227 ISO, creating runs 12% better than average. Premium catcher, any given slate catcher, 4,400, not a bad bat to buy there at that position, and usually in a pretty good spot in this lineup. So Cal Raleigh's pretty much always on the board. He's drawn a 10.82 against Flaherty's home run downside, the best home run option in this lineup. Luke Raley hitting the ball really hard, did so last year as well, 9.1% barrels, 40.7% hard hits this year. 3,800 first base and outfield on DK, 29 on FanDuel. He's hit 15 homers. He's stolen 9 bases, 195 ISO, 114 WRC+. Just another guy that strikes out nearly 30% of the time, and he doesn't really walk. It's not a bad DFS buy if you're stacking up Mariners, but he could also be a victim to Jack Flaherty 3 times in terms of strikeouts. Arozarena, one of the worst seasons of his short career. 16 home runs, 17 stolen bases, a 170 ISO, 110 WRC+, though, has been a positive run creator despite all the bad in his slash line, in his output overall. He's striking out more this season. He's walking 0.2 of a percentage point less. Not going to quibble about that. But he's hitting the ball a lot lighter, 42.5% down from 48% hard hits, 8.4% barrels down from 12.3. But in a vacuum, the 8.4, the 42.5, still not bad. And he costs just 4,500 in the outfield now, 3,000 in the outfield over here with major upside. That's a good ceiling to buy for those prices. Getting him so cheap, getting Raleigh so cheap, getting Julio so cheap is a compelling reason to take shares and shots of the Mariners, even against a guy like Flaherty. It's just a lower success spot. I'd rather wait and take a shot against a different pitcher. But definitely a stack to keep in mind with those prices. Jorge Polanco hasn't really had the season I was hoping for. He's up 12 home runs, a 147 ISO, 2 points below average for run creation. Is up to a 10% barrel rate, 5.92 in the home run model. He's loosely playable at second base. We'll give him that much, but no more. Justin Turner, 33-27. Mix and match caliber guy, does get on base at a decent clip at 342, but not a great option down lineup. Josh Rojas, Dylan Moore, no consistency, a little bit of counting stat ability. 7 homers, 6 steals, and 9 homers and 23 steals. 100 on the nose for Dylan Moore for run creation this season. Mix and match caliber does fill 4 positions for 27 on FanDuel. The Dodgers, probably the more playable of the two teams against Gilbert, given the lower strikeout rate. But again, he's very difficult to score against. He's very difficult to hit home runs against. Doesn't really give up free opportunities via the walk, even against a team that draws a ton of walks like the Dodgers do. It's a really challenging spot for them, just as much as it's a challenging spot for him to succeed. If you're going there, though, Ohtani, kind of obvious off the top, 68-46, 39 home runs, 38 stolen bases, 322 ISO, the second best player in baseball. 6,200, 4,200 for Mookie Betts. Not bad, but very expensive, obviously, at the top of the board. Difficult to put these two guys together, but doable, especially on a slate like this with all the discounts around the slate. 12 home runs, 10 steals for Mookie, a 189 ISO, a 154 WRC+. Obviously elite. The second base eligibility on FanDuel is killer for 4,200. I absolutely love that. I hope it never goes away. Freddie Freeman, 53-35 at first base. A little bit underpriced for his talent on DraftKings. Correct-ish on FanDuel. 290, 390, 486, so 144 WRC plus, 17 home runs. We're maybe coming back down the other side of the mountain with Freddie at this stage of his career, but we're doing it really, really gradually. This is not a Goldie Arenado kind of a drop-off. He's still fantastic. Teoscar Hernandez, 51-35, has 26 home runs on the year, 221 ISO. A lot of strikeouts there for Logan Gilbert to potentially exploit, but a lot of premium contact as well. Gavin Lux, 38-28 across sites, cheap at second base. Obviously prefer Mookie, but if I need to take the discount, move Mookie to shortstop or the outfield and get Gavin Lux in there, I can do that. No issues with it. On DraftKings, he just fits in for a pretty good price. 40.2% hard hits against just 22% strikeouts this year, slashing 254, 313, 400, up to a 101 WRC plus. Finally starting to deliver on what the promise was. Will Smith and Max Muncy, 2 bats down lineup that would be hitting like second and third in like half the lineups in baseball. 16 home runs on the season for Smith, elite contact numbers from a catcher, 110 WRC plus out of him. Muncy missed most of the season, but he's got 11 home runs at 283 ISO and a 128 WRC plus while he's been here. He's high strikeout, but also high walk, 3 true outcomes hitter, 10.1% barrels, 45.5% hard hits this year. Higher numbers last year, 46% hard hits and 14.6% barrels. Miguel Rojas, mix and match infielder, having a pretty decent season for that kind of a player. 283, 325, 404. 6% better than average creating runs. I actually prefer Tommy Edman a little bit. We've got multiple options at second base in this lineup, but Edman's a pretty good stat stuffer in terms of home runs and stolen base upside. He comes and he goes in terms of the consistency, the on base, and the run creation, but he can fill these counting stats a little bit better than Miguel Rojas does. And that is your slate. 537. Look at us finishing early. Larry's saying, saw this stat. Gilbert has a record of 7-9 and a whip of .88. The last starting pitcher to have a losing record and a whip under .90. Ed Walsh in 1910. Jesus. Yeah, these Mariners are not doing any favors to this elite pitching staff that they have. It's a shame. I thought they were going to do more at the deadline. I liked the Rosarena pickup, but I don't think they did quite enough. Him plus Victor Robles, not really going to get you over the line. So it's a shame. This pitching staff has been really good and largely very healthy. But yeah, that's interesting. That's a fascinating stat, Larry. Good drop in at the end of the show. Jack Flash, top of the board, but if you can't afford him, Ryan Pepio is not going to be popular enough. Maybe. I tend to disagree with my peers around the industry as far as those numbers go. I'm surprised they have him as low as they do, but that's what the algos are spitting out. I guess that's where he is. 82, 83 seems like a good buy to me, and if he's going to be that low owned, definitely worth loading up shares for. Very, very talented. Might go bust. You might lose, but at least you're losing from a good position. Nola, Gilbert, Fried, all premium options against high-quality opponents. Nola's probably got the softest option there for his 99-92. He's the highest projected in the group. A lot of strikeouts and a greatly diminished version of Atlanta, but they're still dangerous. They could still lash out on the wrong day, and Nola's a little bit diminished from his former peaks, but a very fair price with a lot of ceiling. Gilbert challenged by the Dodgers, Fried challenged by the Phillies, but very good. More likely to limit the Phillies' offensive upside than to run off, have a monster strikeout day. But we do all know that Max Fried can go out there and give you 9 good innings, so you do have complete game upside with a few of these pitchers. Nestor, I just don't like the matchup, 88-89. It's a fair enough price. You could succeed with Nestor today, but I never like targeting the Guardians. It just doesn't feel like a good spot. Yankee Stadium working against them, and a lot of power showing for the Guardians. So greatly prefer bats on both sides of that one. Tyon, I prefer the Tigers' bats, but I can see it. Definitely think he warrants shares, has enough upside for strikeouts, and those Tigers are, let's say, inexperienced. But I like those young, cheap lefty Tiger bats to throw at a pitcher like Jamison Tyon as a way to get different and very cheap and get to some premium pitcher, premium second stack. Tobias Myers and Kyle Gibson, I think, are both playable from the mid-range. They're not bad options. Those are low totals on both sides of that game. But as we talked about, I kind of like the bats on both sides of that one as well. I can argue it either way. They're fairly priced for that kind of an opportunity, though. You're not making a mistake putting either Tobias Myers or Kyle Gibson into your lineup. Nick Martinez, 6,300 on DraftKings, definitely in play over there. 9,000 is just completely bananas on FanDuel. I don't think you play it. Mitch Spence, 64-65. I definitely think has a little bit of sneaky upside. You got to get that 6th inning, but he's got strikeout-based potential. He's a low strikeout guy, but he's facing a very high strikeout Rays team. Definitely a little bit of low price potential there. Nothing more than a value bargain bin dart throw, but you don't have a lot of those today. It's probably a better spot, honestly, than Nick Martinez. Outside of Martinez's run of clean innings that he got priced up on FanDuel for, there's not much difference between those two pitchers, and Spence has the way better matchup, the way higher strikeout matchup. Jadiel, I just question what the innings look like. 69 on FanDuel, probably not worth it. 73, you can mix and match your way to him a few times on DraftKings, no issues with it. Michael Lorenzen against LA, I don't love it. I think LA maybe succeeds for a few runs there, but he's cheap. You can throw the dart a few times. Cantillo, Cueto, and Meta, or whoever comes out of the Tigers bullpen, are hard-nosed for me. Yeah, I don't see any reason to even dispute any of that or argue for any of those shares. So that's it. Larry saying J-Rod getting hurt in a mess season hurts a lot. Yeah, that definitely was a big ding for the upside of the Mariners. But I think they, like me, were expecting a good bounce back from Jorge Polanco, obviously. I think they were expecting a little bit more from Mitch Haniger coming back to Seattle. So you can see where they went wrong with some of that. What's his face? I almost called him C.J. Abrams. J.P. Crawford. The initials tripped me up. J.P. Crawford dropping from a 380 on base and being a very good run creator at shortstop and having a good season last year to his around 300 on base that he was holding up for most of this year. Big part of the problem for them. Killed their leadoff spot for most of the season. So, yeah, everybody just coming together to have terrible seasons all at the same time was a big part of the problem there. But even just in a man-for-man sense, they had not geared that offense up properly. We just did pitchers. Let's look at the home run board one last quick time here, or for the first time. Judgy up at the top of it again. He delivered from the top of the board yesterday. Him and Shohei kind of pretty consistent at being at the top of the board and delivering from the top of the board. Juan Soto in the 3 spot. Giancarlo Stanton, the home run pick of the day, not far behind at 12.21 against that minor league lefty that the Guardians are rolling out in Yankee Stadium tonight. Love the upside for Yankees power. I'd love to have all 3 of those Yankees outfielders in my lineup. And then there's a lot of good options. You get a cheap enough Gleyber Torres in the leadoff spot. You get a very cheap Ben Rice hitting 9th. You get a cheap, who did I lose track of there? You get a cheap Austin Wells in the catcher spot. Ozzy Peraza, that's who I wanted to talk about. 2,200, 3 positions on FanDuel, 2 positions for 3,000 on DraftKings. That's the guy I wanted to bring back up. And just, again, don't sleep on him. Lot of talent there for a very cheap price at the bottom of the lineup. You just wrap him back around to the top. He can get on base enough to support it, to correlate with these guys from the 8 spot. And he's got a lot of ability if these guys happen to be on base to maybe knock those guys in at a cheap price. So if you're stacking Yankees, that's an easy way to get cheap and different within your Yankee stacks. So is Ben Rice at 27, and none of these guys through the middle are at all expensive. And again, remember, Giancarlo Stanton has the best swing in baseball for your 3,000, your 4,800. It's not necessarily the best swing in baseball, but it's elite. Best bat speed in baseball by like 3 miles an hour. Yeah, Mamba, I think KC was the top of the board. KC, Yankees 1-2, I believe, was the case. And then Dodgers were either 3rd or 4th just on talent and the way that those numbers project out. It's difficult to suppress them. Yeah, that's usually the case with those like good teams, even against challenging pitchers. It was the same for the Phillies. Difficult to suppress their numbers. But yeah, I believe that the top of the board was KC and the Yankees. So that's about it, gang. Kerry Carpenter sneaking in there from the Detroit Tigers. There's Riley Green right there. A couple other Tigers not too far behind down here. There's Vierling. Some of the other guys a little further down there. The model needs to catch up with some of the talent. Those Tigers are, I don't know. It's probably a Sweet Siren song that's going to lead me to crash my ship directly into the Rocky Shoals today, but I think we might chase it. With that in mind, you guys, let me go get projections updated, get it all up on the site. We're going to have it up before 6 o'clock today. How about that? Good luck out there tonight. One more time, hit the like and the subscribe buttons for me. Check out our guys over at acemind.io. Jump into our Discord if you're not in there already. I'll drop another link in before I say goodbye real quick. Discord link going into the chat right now. So good luck out there. Somebody go win something tonight. We'll be back for what's probably, I haven't looked at it yet, but probably a short Thursday slate tomorrow. See ya.